It's the drawing, so I don't have to finish.
You can say as much or as little as you like, but if you got
Good evening. The Design Review Board meeting of May 26th, 2016 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting. Please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. The chairperson may reorder the agenda at his or her discretion. This will be roll call. Mr. Benlian?
Here.
Mr. Charchian?
Here.
Mr. Malikian? Mr. Mardian?
Here.
And Mr. Simonian?
Present.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on May 18th, 2016. Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of any oral communications. Do you?
I don't have any cards on.
We have 3 items on the calendar for today. Mr. Chairman, let you take it.
Thank you. Before we start our first case this evening, I wanted to inform the board and also the public that I'll be recusing myself from the first case. The board will then pick a chairman pro temp, and the chairman pro temp will move the first case along. Once it is concluded, I will return and will resume the meeting. Please remember that once the first hearing the case is heard, it's a live meeting, so please refrain from talking out loud. So with that,
Another note, Mr. Chair, I'll be recusing myself for these 2 cases. I'll be only here for the first case.
So is there a nomination for?
yes, do I have a nomination for chairman pro temp?
I'll nominate Mr. Sharshian.
Second.
This is the traffic consultant. Thank you. Okay. Seeing that there's no comment period, I will take over as chair for this item only and ask staff to read the staff report. Okay, I will be presenting this case on behalf of Kristen Asp, who was the case planner for it. It's case number... Mr. Platt, I'm sorry, yeah, if you would read the case number, because I've neglected to. Case number PDR 1601574. And I will approach the board to look off of the drawings. Take your stick. So this is a... proposal for a new 28-unit multifamily residential building in North Glendale. It is on Honolulu Avenue, and it's a through lot that runs from Honolulu at the north to Sycamore at the south. It's just west of Ramsdale. It's an interesting lot, and in part because of that, this is actually a precise plan of design overlay zone proposal. So your review will be advisory. After this hearing, we will go to Planning Commission and then to City Council for final approval. Any conditions that the board chooses to apply to the project will be brought forward through that chain as your recommendation for any design conditions that you're interested in applying. The lot is 43,000, almost 44,000, And if you look at this, unfortunately small zoning diagram, you can see that it has split zoning. It's 4 parcels, 2 of which along Sycamore are zoned for R1, floor area District 2, and then 2 parcels that front onto Honolulu, and one of those is actually a through block lot between the 2 streets, zoned for C2. So we have a split zone between the commercial and the multifamily residential. That's in part why the PPD is being proposed for the site. Staff feels that the proposal has dealt with a lot of these interesting site conditions in a very interesting and very successful way. So we're very supportive of the project with a few minor conditions. And I'll just walk you through the site plan and then up through the design. You can see that the building is actually composed of 4 separate building envelopes, 3 of which on the east side of the project are on top of a podium with parking below. The 8-unit section over here, which is a freestanding building, is on grade. You can see here the parking garage. The lot has a 3-foot slope from west to east, and then also a 10-foot drop from north to south. So we have a cross slope across the lot that provided the opportunity to have the parking garage entrance to the south at the low end of the site, opening onto Sycamore, which avoids putting any driveways or additional cross traffic onto Honolulu, and also allows the garage at the Honolulu facade to be completely subterranean, though at the Sycamore facade the garage is visible above grade, and I'll talk a bit about some of the design and landscape features that help disguise that fact. The residential buildings, so that all of the units are arrayed in 2-story blocks. So the actual appearance from Honolulu is of a 2-story building. From Sycamore, it's 2 stories of residential above a parking lot that's at street level. There's extensive landscaping along Sycamore and deeper setbacks than we often see or that are required here, with extensive landscaping to kind of screen these elements and hide the grade change. Coming over to the first floor project, you can see 4 units at the grade level here. Units over here arrayed around an interior courtyard with common space here, and then a large common space here, and then also a smaller strip of common space along the north edge of these units. The project meets and exceeds all of the common space and landscape requirements for the R1250 zone, which this is being designed toward that concept as a high-density multifamily project. But with the PPD, the zoning is the PPD, which you're familiar with from the recent case at the Chevy Chase Country Club, basically establishes how this project is going to be built and locks it in perpetuity so that we have, whatever is approved here is what's going to be built and is going to stay on the lot. Coming to the second floor plan, we can see the, let me just check something here. Okay, so the second floor is split because of the elevation change. Second floor of the unit, the grade level units is at this point, and then the second floor plans for the 3 other buildings on the podium are over here. You can see there are walkways connecting these buildings, but there's been an effort made to keep as much exposure to the sky and to sunlight for this interior courtyard that we have in this location. And then the roof plan for the buildings is indicated here. The building has an interesting series of metal-clad shed roofs that disguise the mechanical equipment and create kind of visual interest, which we'll see on the elevations and in the renderings. Along Honolulu, we have 2 buildings with a break between them, which we thought was important given everything we've learned about how to develop these east-west streets in North Glendale to avoid having a very long mass. So there was a break between the 2 buildings, which forms the building's entrance from the Honolulu facade. There's a bridge across this opening at the top with a trellis covering it, but there's still a visual connection to the Verdugo Mountains to the south and breaks the building into 2 masses. At the Sycamore elevation, we see the 3 portions of the buildings that are visible from Sycamore arrayed in this fashion, with a deep setback for the central building, reflecting this common area courtyard with a series of ramps and seating areas here. And then these units corresponding to this group of the at-grade units. And then this section is this facade, which is above the driveway entrance, which you see here. So this is the section of the building where you have the appearance of a 3-story project, but it's really 2 habitable floors with the garage below. Great effort was made to create a landscape plan that would disguise the fact that there's actually a sizable wall rising from grade level along Sycamore. So you can see a series of kind of undulating, sinuous lines that create stepped landscape areas that bring the landscaping up from sidewalk level through the series of terraces to kind of build up against that wall and created what we think is a very effective landscape buffer. At the side elevations, I should note that there is a kind of a body shop over here, just a 1-story use adjacent. It's a 1-story structure here, which is retail offices or stores. And then there's a 3-story senior housing project, a very large building along this side. So efforts are made through the landscaping to screen some of these areas from view for the occupants of the new building. And you can see in this plan here that the garage wall podium is pulled back along the side here and then a small notch here so that there can be timber bamboo landscaping, which will rise up high enough to start screening these adjacent uses that are not quite as visually interesting as you might want if you're sitting on your balcony here. So there'll be effective screening for those units. Because of the grade change, you can see that this unit up at the facing Honolulu on the left here rises up higher than these grade level units facing Sycamore, and that creates an interesting kind of flow for the residents where these units on the grade level are accessed. I guess this is the drawing for that. The 4 units at the grade level of this building are accessed from the front here, which means that they have a porch and kind of an entry area coming in at this level. And then the upper floor units are accessed from a walkway that's contiguous with this level, so that someone who's coming in from the street here would walk along here and walk across this, what is basically a bridge coming across this area because this is below the grade here, and connecting into these 4 units with some light wells bringing light down for the units below. These section drawings give you a sense of how the landscaping is stepping along Sycamore for that effort to kind of disguise aspects of the raised podium. We have 2 sets. Yeah, these are a little bit larger, a little shinier and better quality. But in terms of the design, an effort was made to think about the kind of vernacular of North Glendale, kind of a rustic quality, but still have a modern feel. So there was an effort made to balance those. And then there was an effort made to reflect different qualities. So the Honolulu facades are somewhat different from the Sycamore facades. So if we look at Honolulu, we have a mixture of horizontal siding, vertical siding in a different color, and then these corner notches that are kind of an interesting architectural feature, so that each corner of the building has kind of a structural notch, and those are stucco. So there's a minimal amount of stucco on the building, and then we have these mansard metal-clad roofs that create kind of the shape, give the building some form, and to some degree reduce the scale, I would say. But instead of just having these be a monotonous cap on top of the building, the designers chose to create these gaps that you see on all of the facades, but are most notable for their kind of more modern feel on the Honolulu facade. The balconies are all balconies have an interesting railing pattern that we haven't seen on a lot of designs, called out in red. And then when we come along to the other side, to the south facade facing Sycamore, the design becomes a little more residential feeling, where we have more extensive use of the balconies. These 2 buildings have the same cladding pattern with the horizontal siding, metal roofs, less of the vertical siding that you see on these elements. And then when we come over to this building, an effort was made to kind of think more about the residential structures that are on the south side of Sycamore. So all of the properties on the south side of Sycamore are single-family houses, most of which are 1-story. So this scale drops down in elevation, becomes a little more domestic in feel, and the designers chose to kind of change the cladding materials to some degree by using a shingle material rather than the horizontal siding, and also to incorporate muntins on the windows, giving it a little more of a craftsman feel, but still maintaining the contemporary feel of the roofline. So staff felt that these design concepts were very successful in addressing the different characters of the two street-facing portions of the site. And then there was a very thoughtful effort to create a landscape pattern and design that really had variety and textural differences and color. So there are many, I believe 6 different species of trees are used, many different shrubs. And the design team will have some of the landscapers here or landscape designers here if you have any questions about that. So in our support for the project, staff did notice really just that there were a few things missing from the submittal package. So we've added 3 conditions. The first, we're asking that a lighting plan be submitted for approval before it goes into plan check. We are looking for details of the windows so that we understand how both the windows with the muntins and the non-muntined windows are set within the wall. And then we also need more information about some of the paving materials of the driveway and some of the walkways. So unless you have any questions, that's staff's presentation.
Are there any questions for staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Question, why is the building in your staff report classified as a 3-story?
Because technically when you come over to this side, this becomes a 3-story portion of the building because it's on the podium and it's...
I got that slope difference, but is it because of the top of curb elevation averaging? Is that?
I believe so.
Because based on building codes, the way I'm looking at the section, it's classified as a 2-story building.
It feels very much like a 2-story building, but just to be careful, we didn't want to pretend that it was just a 2-story building, which gives the public kind of an expectation that it's going to not have this kind of height at this location.
Another question, you mentioned that the stepping in the front on Sycamore, but I only see it where the driveway is. Everything else kind of drops.
No, all along here,
all along there,
when you look at all of these terraces, this is 1240. There's a ramp to 1241. This is lower here because
much
this.
Lower, yeah.
And when you look at the section here, there's an elevation drop for those units that are at grade.
Any other questions?
Are these new parkway trees, or is there?
I believe so. I don't think there are parkway trees there now.
Yeah, I didn't see much.
Verify with the landscape architect.
Okay. Mr. Badu, I do have one question myself. There's a substantial number of bicycle racks in the project, which is great, but I was a little confused as to the access point. It seems like they're subterranean.
It's interesting. The
semi-subterranean.
Yeah, the bike racks. The bike racks are in this area. They're kind of hanging bike racks, so they're accessible from the lower level here, not from the upper level. So which is. You can get into the garage and come out through the garage, I believe.
Gotcha, yeah.
But this is the main bicycle storage area.
The hanging aspect explains it. Okay,
Right.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions for staff, I'm going to open up the public hearing. I believe the first 2 speakers are representing the architect. I'm going to limit comments to 15 minutes combined for the presentation by the architect. And the first person up is Vijay Singhal. Mr. Singhal, please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Vijay Sehgal. I'm with FSY Architects. Address is 2902 Knox Avenue, Los Angeles. And I'm going to be the architect on the project. I was brought on board yesterday, and I've familiarized myself with the project. I prepared my presentation, but I think Jason did such a good job that he covered most of my presentation. So I'll keep my presentation to minimum. I'll just say that just for some of the few facts, that the lot coverage this project is doing is about 47%. The maximum building height allowable is 36 feet plus 5 feet is 41 feet. and we're proposing a 28 feet high project. The landscape requirement for the R1 zone will be 25% of the lot area, which will be 10,890 square feet, and we are providing more than the required open space. And same time for the FAR, the allowable FAR is about 52,332, and we are providing 38,000 square feet. Again, the required parking, 60 parking spaces with 7 guest parking spaces. And other than that, I think your staff report presentation covered everything I had to say. But if you have any questions, I'm here to answer that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I have a question. How was the density calculated in this particular case? Maybe staff should answer that. Is it based because it's a precise plan review?
Yeah, members of the board. Yeah, so essentially, the product's been designed to the R1250 standards, which if the whole site, excuse me, if the whole site was done to 1250, they'd be allowed up to 43 units based on the square footage of the overall site. With the R1 zone and the C2 zone that's there now, they would be allowed about 21 units as it currently sits today. So they're now proposing 28, which is kind of less than the 1250 standards and on par with what they could actually build in the overall site.
Sir, thank you. Next speaker is Jennifer Zeal, so with the architectural team. Or is it Zell?
Zell, yes. And may I approach
Sure.
the plan?
And there's a stick, pointer stick right there.
So it's covered already, but I just wanted to speak for 1 or 2 minutes about the overall landscape plan and talk about just the big idea. And the big idea for the landscape here was to create a park-like setting for the residents, not only the future residents that will move in here, but also the existing residents that are immediately across the street and in the neighborhood. And we've spoken with the residents and gotten their feedback in this design process. And I think one of the important things we heard from them is to create a generous landscaped parkway, both along Sycamore, the residential, and also along Honolulu. And so what we've done, as you mentioned, we've created a landscape buffer here along Sycamore, a walkway, and then on the property side of the property line, we've also created this undulating, battered cobble wall to give the street a little bit more landscaping in that area and create a nice experience. And the residents also were looking now for a straight wall, which is what exists now. There's a wall right up against the edge of the sidewalk, and a double row of trees. And so as you move up through the site, also, like you said, the grade change is taken up with the stairs and the ramps. And here, I don't know if you can all see it, but this is the garage entry, which we're buffering. We wanted to mitigate the impact of the garage, the parking garage, and so there's a tiered landscape buffer. There's also landscape that comes from the second floor down, draping down, and that's the theme, like you mentioned, walking through here. Yeah, you already talked about the bamboo, which is buffering the east and west edges. And what you won't see, there's no common areas for gathering and barbecue. It's really just a beautiful park-like passageway area through here. And that was a request of the residents for maybe potential impacts. And along Honolulu as well, double row of trees. And really that's the idea, is a beautiful park-like landscape with generous setbacks.
Yes, of course.
All the planners on the garage are braced planners?
The planners, these here
No,
on the structure?
the courtyard and where the building, where the garage, yeah.
Yes, some of these are on
Well,
grade.
those are on grade, but
Yes.
the ones above the garage deck, are they all on grade? I mean,
No, some of these will be on structure.
on the structure, the
Yes.
raised planners.
Yes, they'll be built up. Here, we have the,
No, I
building,
know.
okay.
The other thing, I only noticed 2 seating areas. Is there any way more seating can be created in your scheme? Because the only seating area that I see is in the front, those 2 benches.
That's true, and
Because you have such a lush, open area, and if we want to use this area further, more active, maybe more seating should be introduced. That's a comment I'll
Yeah.
address later. But the other thing, what's the purpose of this circular? I know you have a grade change, but what's the?
I'm not sure. I'd have to get back to you, other
Okay.
than just a nice walkway and an area to add some trees and shrubs.
Because it's just a kind of a walk,
An oval,
and nobody can use it, or maybe,
occupy like the inside of it.
or no, around the perimeter of it.
Maybe that's a comment,
Okay.
is to add.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Did you want to comment on any of the slides that you have up?
Oh, I forgot.
Content materials, and we can move this over
Okay.
if need necessary.
These are different, some of the different plant materials chosen. The Arbutus marina, beautiful reddish bark. The bamboo that's on the east and the west. The Palo Verde trees, which you can see here in this kind of goldenrod color. Melaleuca olives, which are here throughout, and the Tristania, which is along the street here. And you can see and these are some shrubs and ground cover, and we added some color. And certainly the key is here is all landscape materials, low and very low WUCALS level, water needing level. So it limits the palette, but it's really still Mediterranean climate adapted palette here. I think that's it. I know one of your comments as well is to specify paving material. These are some options, so we can address that in a response.
Those are permeable material?
No, right now we don't have permeable. We do have a design for, and the intention is for a dry well to collect in stormwater and for a dry well, but we don't have permeable pavers right now.
I don't know. I think there's an iron gate over the front fence.
Yes, you can see along here.
I see it on the elevation.
Yes, there's a dashed line. It's kind of hard to see with all the lines. And it's set back a little, and it's semi-transparent.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, and,
Chairman, I filled out my card. I wasn't sure
oh,
if
did
it
you,
got
you can
into
fill out
the-
one afterwards, that's fine. Go
I
ahead and
have
state your name.
already, but it may not go in the right sequence. My name is John O'Bagdanian. I did hand it out.
Oh, yeah, you were going to be the next person I was
Oh,
going to call.
I'm sorry.
so
I just want to make
go
sure
ahead.
that you have it. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, John O'Bagdanian, JB Associates. I did a traffic analysis for this project. I only wanted to just emphasize the location of the driveway for the project that is located on Sycamore. When the project applicant looked to the access points for this project, we had discussions with the city's traffic engineer, and it was determined that putting a driveway on Honolulu at where the frontage of the property is on Honolulu would be too close to the intersection of Sycamore and to the intersection of Rosemont and Honolulu. Therefore, the driveway is located on Sycamore at the farthest east end of the project location, so that primarily the traffic that is generated by the project will access the project to and from Sycamore, and then making right or left turns at the intersection of Rosemont and Sycamore if they're going north toward Honolulu, or they may go south toward further south to the south end on Rosemont. So I have other information. If questions come up as far as the trip generation of the project, I'll be happy to discuss those during the AM and the PM peak hours. And we found that there were no significant impacts in terms of traffic impacts at the intersection of Sycamore and Rosemont, and the intersection of Rosemont and Honolulu based on the city's traffic impact guidelines. With that, I conclude my presentation. If there will be any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. Do you think the 20-foot driveway is sufficient to serve 60 semi-cars?
Yes, that's a typical residential driveway for this type of a driveway. We would recommend that the driveway also have a curb radiuses so it's easier to turn in and out versus a dustpan type of a square driveway. But the trip generation of this project, especially during peak hour, is very low, about 19 to 20 cars coming in and out. So that type of a driveway should be adequate. Again, it will be reviewed by the city's traffic engineer, building and safety. So if there's any adjustments to be made, that can also be made.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker on our list is Grant Michaels. And Mr. Michaels, and for the other comments from people in the community and not on the architectural team, we're going to limit it to 3 minutes just for sake of time and also allow everyone an opportunity to speak before the hour gets too late. Thank you, Mr. Michaels. Please begin
Good
your
evening,
comments.
board members. I am Grant Michaels. I'm the president of the Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Neighborhood Association. I first want to say that the developer of this project reached out to us well over a year ago and began discussing this project with us. From that, 5 meetings were held, 2 community meetings were held that were open to the public. And from that, we gave feedback onto this project, and I can see that reflected in the design. I do want to speak to the precise plan of design, and in this case, I do believe that it is appropriate. Looking at the zoning, if the zoning were changed to match the commercial zoning or the residential zoning, that zone change would be a entitlement to the property. With the PPD, that effectively locks, as staff mentioned, this project into an R1250 style or limits, meaning that rather than being able to build 3 stories on the commercial portion at Honolulu, the project is limited to 2 stories. If this project is not built or sold, changed, the precise plan of design would prevent a zone change. If the commercial zone were extended over the R1 section. In that sense, we do support the precise plan of design for this project. I would also like to speak to the the landscape architecture, the park-like design in pushing the residences away from the Sycamore side. That was an extensive comment, and the park-like setting was extensively discussed at those community meetings. So this project is reflective of that. Additionally, I just would like to add what was not mentioned, the buildings will be pre-wired for solar on the rooftops, and it was briefly mentioned the dry well would sequester the groundwater. So, in conclusion, the Neighborhood Association is supportive of this project as designed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to thank you, Mr. Grant, for being so cooperative in meeting with the applicant, because this way makes our job a bit easier. I see a full room in most of these, and I appreciate the compromise you both have reached.
This was something new for both of us. The Neighborhood Association typically, like many of the residents, gets the notice once the plan is designed. For us to have the input ahead of time, this is the best compromise that we think can be found.
Yeah, and I want to also state for the record that we do have a letter of support from the Montrose Verdugo Spar Heights Neighborhood Association, so that's also been a letter that we've received in our packets and are considering this evening. Thank you, sir. Okay, next speaker is Mary Ann Jennings.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Mary Ann Jennings. I live at 3406 Rosemary Avenue, and I have lived there for 44 years. I've seen many changes occur in the neighborhood, and it does include many craftsman homes. I'm less than 5 blocks from the project, and I have been able to go to 4 out of the 5 meetings that were allowed the area to know what is being planned in the project. And I am very in favor of the project. The flow of traffic, they listened to us when we said we really didn't want to see it on Honolulu because of the precarious area with a private school diagonal from the project. The landscaping is very encouraging. It will break the look of the building being so large, and the break of the roof line breaks down the massing from happening. And I was very pleased that they did reach out to the community, and they did listen to our suggestions when they were doing the architecture. So I am in favor of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings. Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Michael Morgan. Or is that Morgal? Morgan, okay.
Which is what I'm going to say.
Casually wrote that.
Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, staff, my name is Michael Morgan. Though I'm a board member of the Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Neighborhood Association, which has this property within its neighborhood association's boundaries, I'm speaking as a private citizen. The developer, Mr. Simonian, reached out to the community for input, and I have attended all 5 community meetings, which you have heard, and I just want to put them on the record, starting with the first in May of 2015. Then in June of 2015 at the Citibank community meeting, which was the community itself involved, fall of 2015 at the MVSNA board meeting, and November of 2015 at the MVSNA annual meeting. At each meeting, Mr. Simonian took the community's advice and asked for guidance shaping his project. To the one you see before you, I am a Glendale historian and am sad to see the Three Oaks Lady Jane's mixed property disappear. But I am very happy that that loss will result in this very worthwhile project. As the project has 2 fronts, one on Honolulu and the other on Sycamore, this project is compatible for both. I urge you, the board, to approve this project. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next speaker is Sandra Blanchard. Blanchard. Thank you.
This is my first time speaking before the board, so here I go. I'll keep it short and sweet. The drawings that Mr. Simonian presented for the development are beautiful. The buildings blend into the area perfectly, as well as the landscaping. And I think this will be a big plus for the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker is Deepak Anchani. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, my name is Deepak Ashnani. I live 2630 Sycamore Avenue, just across this project going on. I have attended 2 meetings out of 5 that I heard right now, and I have always given my feedback. First of all, I purchased my house 25 years back, looking to the view that I'm going to miss once the project is coming, because the 3-story building is going to be just front of my house. So, and second thing I heard, I respectfully disagree with the traffic. Right now, if there is a third person coming to my house, I don't have parking in my front of my house. With this 28 units, that's going to add more traffic, more entry at the Sycamore Avenue, which is not going to be good for the residents right now. And I'm not sure how much setback is needed for 2-story. I read all the material. It says it needs 5 feet for single story. There's going to be 3-story on the Honolulu side, 2-story on the Sycamore side, and 36 feet that is shown in the maps. And it says the air conditioning, everything on the top of the roof, which I'm not sure how much is going to add more, and it's going to block my view basically. So I disagree with the project and oppose it.
Okay. Sir, I'm going to ask a question to staff because the gentleman mentioned that he's concerned that the air conditioning units would add height. But for for clarification, I think that these are the air conditioning units are recessed behind the parapets.
Exactly.
Correct?
Yeah. You're allowed 5 additional feet of height when you have a sloping roof, as these parapets are, and they hide the air conditioning.
Okay, so we can at least address one of your concerns immediately, and that is the air conditioning units are actually behind the roof line.
I mean, Mr. Chair, I think based on what I read on the staff report, this building meets code parking requirement. Not
Yes, it does.
meets all of 7 guest parking, so they do meet the code requirements as far as parking. And all the other setbacks, based on what I see, meet all the R1250 standards.
I have seen some other apartments in the area where their entry is from Major Street, which is next to Cross Street. I'm not sure why this is not considered to enter from the Honolulu Avenue instead of Sycamore Avenue.
Okay, thank you for your comments, sir. Okay. Next speaker is... I just want to clarify if this is for this project because the project address is not on the form. Sirius Sajian? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Sirius Sajian, and I live 2 blocks away from the subject property.
Can you state your address for the record?
3637 Angeles.
Thank you.
And it's 2 blocks from the subject property where I've lived for the last 30 years. Various times the distinguished members of this board have encouraged applicants and developers to reach out to the community for outreach purposes. And I must admit that Mr. Simonian is the master of this process. We have had an opportunity to meet him several times in the last few months and have had very productive meetings with him. And from the inception, I realized that he's someone we can work with to come up with a mutually acceptable project. I moved to this area because of the mountains, and the protection of the view on the mountains is paramount to me. And initially, Mr. Simonian proposed to build 3-story buildings on Honolulu, but fortunately, he enthusiastically accepted and embraced our recommendation for 2-story buildings throughout the whole site, and mitigating some of the concerns that we have and making a beautiful design and project. I'm pleased with the end result. I'm looking forward to the completion of this project. As for the design, mass, scale, landscape, the renderings and plans speak for themselves. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Paul Sarkisian. And Mr. Sarkisian, before you start, we'll need you to state your address for the record as well.
1329 Greenbrier Road. I'm Paul Sarkisian. I'm a local business owner. Been here for almost 40 years. I've seen a lot of changes within the Glendale city. I think mostly a lot of the changes were downtown Glendale, as we know. There's been a lot of changes there, but not too much around Spar Heights. Honolulu area, Montrose area. I believe it'll be a nice change over there. We love to shop there. We love to walk there. It's really nice and everything. But I think the plan and being 1-acre lot, having just only 28 units, I think it's very fair to say that they were being very, less impact for the neighborhood. But I'm in favor of it, and I think it'll be a great project for the city as well, especially for Montrose. Thank you.
Okay, our last speaker card is for Matt Dixon. If anyone has not filled out a speaker card and wishes to speak, please do so now.
Thank you. My name is Matt Dixon. I live at 620 West Wilson Avenue in Glendale. We all know housing prices and rents in Los Angeles keep going up and up and up, and the only way we're going to fix that is to build more housing. This project's a great project. Design looks beautiful. It's in a neighborhood that's walkable, businesses nearby. And I'd urge the board to support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any more speakers? If you would wish to speak, okay. I am going to also note that there is a letter from the Crescenta Valley Community Association in support of the project, and then a letter from Eric Kraus, also in support of the project, and a letter from a Rafi A. It looks like a Rafi Asaturian, who's a neighbor on Sycamore, who is against the project. And these are letters have been considered by the board. I'm going to close the public comment part of the hearing and open it up for discussion. Who would like to start?
I think you need to give a rebuttal for the
Oh, I'm sorry,
applicant.
rebuttal? Yeah, thank you. You can tell it's one of my first times doing the chairmanship. Would the applicant like a rebuttal? If so, come up. Let's limit it to 5 minutes.
I guess I think there's one issue which is unresolved for one of the person who was opposing the project. The view, Mr. Simonian, we did check the sight lines a year ago when we started the project. If somebody comes in, if this project is not approved and somebody else comes into this project and could develop by right a 3-story building on the commercial portion of the project, and then they take care of the whole view, the view is already gone. Considering that the design team has paid much more attention to the design and the mass and scale of the building, and bringing the building down to a 2-story building to impact make the least impact on the neighbors. So I know the view, maybe the right across the street from the, you'd say the sidewalk across the street is gone, but as you go up higher or on the roof of the other house or the upper levels, the view would be there. The design team did pay that attention to that aspect of the project, that impact.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for applicant? No? Okay. I will close the hearing and open up for discussion. Who would like to
I'll start.
Yeah?
I'm going to start by saying, wow, I haven't been on this board for too long, but have not seen all the associations and almost everybody in the neighborhood support the project yet. So I think that should set a precedent where these developers learn on how reaching to the community and working with the community. And when we say reaching to the community, we're not talking about you're sending an email and saying, hey, this is what I'm proposing, and then you say, yeah, I spoke to them. I mean, this is reaching to the community means meeting with them, go through the design, implement their ideas, implement their vision, changing your building and compromising. I mean, this is the best of both worlds. I just wanted to say that. Now I'll go through my notes and... Okay, so the North Glendale Community Plan has a very distinctive criteria that this design adheres to, as we saw in Mr. Platt's presentation and as the designers mentioned as well. I'm going to talk about the 4 main items that when I reviewed the project I looked at, and these are: the first one is the designer or the architect shifted the mass of the building away from the residential portion and pushed it towards the commercial portion, which conforms to the design guidelines. And that's very evident by the general setback we get along Sycamore. And in addition to that, the design handled the grade changes by the use of multiple garden walls, which also conforms to the design guidelines. So that's the first item. The second item, the guidelines also call for design to be in line with the surrounding context, specifically when it comes to setbacks and height. And we see the project meeting that by basically limiting the building height to 2 stories along Sycamore to be more aligned, and pushing the setback and to be more aligned with the R1 properties along that are adjacent to the project. The design also managed to follow the vehicular pattern of the driveway location for both the adjacent buildings. So I guess the multifamily on Sycamore to the left of the project has the driveway in a similar location to this project, and also the auto body on the right-hand side also have the driveway. So this project kind of follow the pattern for the neighborhood. I will lastly talk about the design and detail of the building, which also meet the guidelines. So the design managed to mix two architectural styles to better fit the project within the context. So the units along the Sycamore, they, as mentioned in the staff report and by the designer, they have the craftsman feel to them, which are very similar. Not similar to the adjacent R1 properties. And also, and coupled with the Stone River Garden Wall, that creates a solid entry, which is also similar to the adjacent. So the entry to these units is very similar to the adjacent single-family homes. Now, on the north side, the architect used a more contemporary style that's more within that goes more with the commercial development within. On Honolulu, and he did that by using different materials and a more contemporary palette. And I think he morphed both designs together and unifying them by using similar materials that is used in both designs. So he used the metal roofs in both the traditional and the contemporary, and he also used the siding and the balcony railing. So I think this project meets most of the criteria that the design guidelines ask for, and I'm in support of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I concur with the comments of my colleague. Before I start my comments on design, I must say that this is a commercial zone. If a commercial building is put up there, it's going to be much larger, will create more impact. And if the precise plan has, he's not going through the precise plan, then the number of units will be much more. And I think 28 units is appropriate density. I like the site planning. I think the site planning is appropriate. I think establishing 4 different buildings, break the building mass, and substantial setback, open space, including common area, is apparent on the plan. And I read the guidelines also for the Glendale Community Plan. It does call out for the commercial portion to be close. The commercial portion of that property, the building should be closer to that, and the mass should be located there. And a lower mass on the residential portion, which I think is very nicely done. And this building is, by looking at the floor plan, it's flat units. It will cater to ADA accessibility to all the units, which is a positive. The mass and scale, or the articulation of the roof, and the vertical articulation, horizontal, is apparent as well. One thing I really appreciate the design of this building is, in fact, although my colleague mentioned that that's contemporary on the Honolulu and more residential craftsmen on Sycamore, but yet they create a cohesiveness throughout the design, and it fits well. And I do also want to say that this building, unlike other buildings that we've seen, it's approaching a traditional style, which is, I think, appropriate for the neighbor rather than more of a contemporary, more of a boxy look. And this building creates character. It has character-defining feature from the windows, the railings, the material change. I think they're all good quality materials. The only, and of course I want to mention, which I really appreciate the applicant's approach on those 4 units to be accessible from the street level. The only comments that I have is actually, I like to see a little more usable common space by introducing more seating. It's got a lot of areas, open areas. In order to make this more of an active area, I think more seating should be incorporated. And I'm not sure, I'll leave it for discussion, about this area, because this will include, what is the purpose of this, as I mentioned to the applicant. This could be additional, landscaping in that area, unless if the board make that as a consideration to revisit that oval shape area. But I do like to see some more seating, more active, usable area. It's got a lot lush landscaping and mature trees. I think it's a plus, but this area needs to be used. Otherwise, it won't be, it's pretty overactive, in my opinion. And in general, I'm in support of the project. I think the design is well done. And again, I want to mention I appreciate the fact that associations have met with the applicant and came to some sort of a compromise and a conclusion. With that, those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I will add to my comments as well. Overall, I'm in support of the project. I think it's very evident that a lot of time and a lot of effort has been put into the design, and the outreach to the community, I think, is very important, and it speaks volumes, not just in this hearing, but in the hearings that are to come, that it behooves applicants to reach out to the community and collectively come up with a plan that works. And that saves, I think, everyone a lot of angst, especially with projects of this size. I think that this project is very well suited for the Montrose area. I think that they have done a very good job in following the guidelines that are established for the North Glendale Community Plan. And I like some of the features, specifically the Battered River Stone garden features that kind of pay homage to the fact that this type of border and fence is very prolific, and at one point in time all of the homes, especially the single-family homes, had that kind of a feature if they had any sort of slope differential in their property. So that use of that river stone, I think, is a nice touch. Overall, the design really limits the mass and scope, both with the landscaping and also with the articulations and height differentials. The main concern area that I share with my colleague, is the issue of the open space. I understand that maybe there was some community feedback that kind of directed the developer not to include some uses, and because it is fronting Sycamore and the neighbors, I could see it would have some legitimate concerns. But there are some interior areas within the project that I think would benefit with some seating. You're going to have families that are interested in this project that are going to come with children, typically young families that are starting out potentially, and they're going to have kids. And these kids are going to want to run around. And their parents are going to want to stand there and watch them. They're going to want to be sitting down, maybe reading a book, and watch them. I think some amenities need to be included for the 28 units on the property. And I think they can be done in a way, again, maybe with some community feedback, to take them away from the front so that they're not creating a noise issue or a visible issue with it being right at street level. But I think there's some interior space. Now, and the other area that I think I would give some feedback on is the materials for the paving. I think that where the lot is on grade and not over the subterranean parking lot, I think some permeable or semi-permeable paving materials should be used, or at the very least, if they can incorporate some maybe weeping lines or some sort of method to address the volume of water that's going to come through, I think that would be advantageous as well. I think that is it. Now, if there's no other comments, what the task in front of us is actually not to approve this project. The task in front of us is to make a recommendation to the Planning Commission and to City Council as to what our findings are in DRB. So I think that the most expeditious way to do that would be to entertain a motion which recommends, either approval or, denial of the project, but also incorporates the staff's findings, which are in conditions. So are we in agreement on the conditions that are on page 7 of our report, the 3 conditions?
Mhm.
And are there any other conditions that we'd like to add? Jay, would you like to read those?
Yeah, it sounds like there's consensus to find a way to add more amenities to the common spaces, particularly away from the Sycamore side of the project. That could include seating, perhaps tables, something like
seating. I think is the
seating primarily
idea.
And then there's a recommended condition to introduce permeable paving at the at-grade portions of the project.
Yes.
I wasn't sure that I understood your recommendation. What I heard was weeping limes. But
No, lines, like instead of, so because the material board.
Just to direct water off the paving?
Some scored materials potentially. And so those scores might be actually, designed for weeping purposes.
That's good. Weeping limes didn't make sense.
Filtration, yes. Filtration.
Okay. We'll work with the design team to.
I think the seating area, if I may interrupt, should be somewhere in here, because he's got a couple of benches in here, somewhere in this area.
Yeah,
not necessarily to the, close to the street or somewhere around.
The area that I was thinking of, but this is not to us, but there's some really internal areas that are great for walkways, but they could also be enhanced with sitting areas, as exemplified by the samples that are, in front of the board. There's some great samples of seating that extend, but are not really incorporated like this entry bench area. But the depiction is maybe 20, 25 feet, where what we really have there is maybe 6 or 7 feet.
Well, those are at the entry, those 2 benches up there.
Yeah, but these are 6.
Those are the circular.
Yeah.
So we'll have a condition to introduce seating at multiple areas as much as possible away from Sycamore. And then we had a final recommendation to possibly remove the kind of oval-shaped walkway to the right of the central court and introduce more landscaping in that area, unless we were to learn that there's a special reason for that to be there, which I'm not sure that there is.
We can make it as a
consideration
to restudy that area.
Okay.
I would be in support of that. Okay. Any other conditions? Okay. So I'll entertain a motion on a recommendation to the Planning Commission and to the City Council.
I'll make a motion to recommend to Planning Commission and City Council.
I'll second that.
So that's approval with conditions.
Approval of the project, yes.
Okay. I'll call for a roll call vote. Mr. Collin?
Do I do that, or you do that? You're the case man. I'm the case man. I'm doing it. Board Member Benlian?
Yes.
Board Member Mardian?
Yes.
And Chair Charchian?
Yes.
3-0. In support.
Okay. So that concludes the hearing on this matter. And let's see if Mr. Simonian is here. He will resume the chair. If anyone wants to take a quick stretch, you can, but I'm not inclined to. I'm not inclined to do a break, so please keep comments to a minimum.
That's it? I don't pay much attention to it, so I just know I usually don't go to
Guess we're taking an impromptu break.
Take me out of my particular place and I'm lost.
See you.
Good luck, guys. I'm not going to be here anymore.
See you next time. We have to look at those two
I'll mention it to staff.
Thank you, guys.
Kristen, is the record set?
That'll be good. That way we can put them up.
And the speaker cards as well.
Okay.
I don't think we took an official recess. Changing of the guard.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted
Seen you guys in a while.
announce
Everything
that
okay?
we still have a hearing going. As such,
Good?
Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins? Brad?
Salem is.
Actually, we got to keep going.
We got to keep going. We have a live hearing going on. As such, please, if you need to speak, go outside. Our next case this evening is PDR 1515429, and Mr. Baglikian is our case planner. So whenever you are ready, sir, please come up and introduce the project. As a reminder, yeah, we all.
Is it the way you want to? Stay.
And also, as a reminder, Mr. Mardian has recused himself for the remainder of the evening. Salem, okay. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, design review board members. This next application is for the development for a proposed single-family dwelling on 2 lots in the. Sorry. This is for a proposed development of a single-family dwelling on 2 lots located in the R1R restricted residential zone, Florida Ratio District 1. The property consists of 2 lots, 2 hillside lots, each fronting on a different street. So the development would consist of a 3,233 square foot house with a 2-car garage, and the combined lot would have an area of 12,700 square feet. The garage access will be from the Gladys Drive side. On one level, there will be an interior entrance lobby. The residential or the habitable portion of the house would be above the garage and extending further to the east, to the west, towards the Luring Drive side. And the design is such that slopes are less severe on the Gladys Drive side. That's why the garage access and the driveway access is from the Gladys side. The drop in elevation on the Luring side is more pronounced, and there is no vehicular access on the Luring side. And this is reflected in the design of the building. We have reviewed this project, and we find it consistent with the design guidelines, with the adopted design guidelines. In terms of site planning, the building, the garage is excavated into the hillside, and the top of the hill is partially dug or excavated in order to allow for the building to be sunk into, to be nestled into the ground. So as such, staff feels the building design fits the topography of the site. The decks, there are small decks on one side of the building, and they wouldn't be very visible because they would be dug into the hillside with a series of little retaining walls towards the upslope side of the property. With respect to the massing of the building consists of simple rectangular shapes that are articulated either in changes in plane or with the change in materials. The lower level materials are more rustic, consist of stone cladding. The materials on the upper levels are less rustic, consisting of stucco and cement siding, and thereby they accentuate the volumes and reduce from the feeling of massing. In addition to that, the roof line, the flat roof, has articulation in height, and this further breaks up the massing of the building. With respect to the With respect to the detailing, I covered some of the items. In addition to that, there's metal accents that will further articulate the building mass. Having said all this, I would like to wrap up my presentation. Our recommendation is for approval with a number of conditions, and the conditions are for items that haven't been addressed on the plans. One is the location of there are some retaining walls up the slope that are defining the outdoor deck. These retaining walls, the way they are specified on the plan, would consist of stucco finish. Stucco finish is not a material approved in this zone, and staff's recommending that a stone finish be used. And this is the way we drafted it. This will be subject to staff's approval with the board's concurrence. Location of mechanical equipment. This is not specified on the plan, but we feel there are many locations outside on the decks where an air conditioning condenser can be located and away from public view. And the trash enclosure is not shown, but on the lower level, in the lobby area, this area may be slightly enlarged to contain trash containers, and therefore they wouldn't be outside. The paving material is also not specified, the paving of the driveway, and this can be specified if the project's approved in the plan check process, subject to staff's approval with the board's concurrence. Having said all this, I would like to wrap up my presentation unless there are questions of the board.
I have a few, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
So it seems that there's a issue with encroachment on the guest house of the neighboring lot. So my question is, the required setback for this home, is it being measured from the property line or the physical location of the guest house?
Setbacks are measured from property lines, and I think you're referring to the situation here. Setbacks are measured from property lines. I've researched the situation here. I haven't found any permits issued for these properties here for a guest house. I found a permit for a carport with one wall enclosed. And every permit that I checked for the properties here don't reference, including the plans, don't reference anything from this property. So either this is built in error or
It's I'm sorry to maybe clarify. I'm not concerned. This is not the purview of our board to deal with that issue of permitting or not permitting of adjoining a guest house. I just want to know that setback between the corner, I would call it looks like the south, call it west or east corner of the property here. Is this setback to here? What is that setback to this building? How close are you?
I just did a quick estimate, and it's slightly over 10 feet. If you draw a 10-foot radius from that corner, it will never touch the guest house.
Okay. Okay. And then the other question that I had, your recommendation is an interior trash storage area at the first level, garage level. I guess we would best see maybe there. So you're suggesting building into the slope further, building into the slope?
right here, yes, possibly here, or possibly outside somewhere here, but it will be hidden from public view.
In your recommendation, which location would be least disturbing to the slope?
We would prefer somewhere in this area here.
And that would be less disturbing to the slope?
And the visibility of it, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One question I had was, we have this scenario, let's say in this area, where we have this, the base of the building that pops up above the existing contours. Have multiple garden walls been discussed to kind of alleviate this mass where there would be, let's say, a smaller garden wall and then another small one, so you kind of terrace up? And I think, you could kind of see it in the top elevation. If if these were kind of higher up,
Right.
it would really blend in. Has that been discussed with the applicant?
We didn't discuss that, but that is certainly an option that can be investigated. However, given the shape of the building, because the building facades are angled, they are not straight, the elevation drawing doesn't fully depict the way the building is going to look. That's more apparent in the perspective. Since the height is not that high, we felt the building is not going to be that high in terms of visible mass. And this mound here is actually this mound, which is less imposing in elevation view, in the perspective. In elevation, it appears a little different.
Sure.
So the perspectives, I think, are a better illustration of what the building is going to look like as opposed to the elevations.
Mr. Chair, I have another
Yes.
question when you're.
Go ahead.
The staff report was silent on this issue, so I just want clarification. Are there any protected trees on this lot?
No, they haven't been identified. And our urban forestry division has looked at it, and they
have
didn't
looked at it,
identify
okay.
any protected
All right.
trees.
Thank you.
Do we know? Yes, go ahead.
That retaining wall that we see in the elevation over here, is it visible from any of the other properties?
It will be partially visible, yes. Some of it, the lower portion is not visible, and this is what we call that in the staff report in terms of changing the materials.
Because of the visibility.
I think, if I remember correctly, this would be like a 5-foot high wall or lower, depending on topography.
And then that's where, right, this is where that residence is just right next to it,
Right.
above it, right? So there's really a residence right there.
Right. And we are recommending, and to be consistent with the code, a stone finish that matches, that goes with the hillside for those retaining walls.
Any other questions for staff?
No.
Thank you. I have Garo Nazarian as the applicant. Would you like to speak on behalf of the applicant? Very good. Good evening.
Good evening.
Introduce yourself by name for the record.
Okay. My name is Garo Nazarian with Domus Design, 109 East Harvard Street, Unit 306. As the project presented by the Babdikian, it's a hillside area facing 2 street, and this lot has three-way slope. A slope from Gladys Drive, a slope up from the Luring Drive, and has the cross slope too. So this project is designed based on the very carefully studied site plan study to minimize the grading and minimize the massive and the height of the building to comply with. So it's a very, deep study site design this to comply with the codes. This project doesn't require any variance or any deviation from the zoning code. We comply with all the codes. And the design is compatible with the neighborhood, as if you check the neighborhood, it's all mostly contemporary design, and there is no other dominated architectural style in the area, which in the area they are still buildings 3 stories or even 4-story look building, but we try to keep this project low level, the height, not to give that big impression, the massiveness. And the building material, it's chosen as a contemporary design, which it's compatible with the design. And other things, I did review the comments of the staff. I don't have any problem with that, just that retaining walls in the backyard. You can see from these drawings, but in reality, walking in the street, on the street level, that wall is not visible, but I don't have any problem to change that material from stucco to other, but because by adding that, I would prefer in that time, instead of the brick stone veneer, to use the split face concrete block, which is the look wise, it's mostly the same as a brick stone veneer, but it's more regular shapes. Other than that, I don't have any comment. The trash area, I did a study. I can provide a room, a notched area in the garage to put the trash bins there, and the driveway surface will be stone paver. So, if you have any other question, I will be more than happy to answer it.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yes, please.
Can you walk us through the thought for this portion here, the design?
Yes, please. And there's a pointer, there you go. Thank you so much.
This is the north elevation, which is this elevation. This
No, I
one.
think that's the top elevation.
Oh, yeah, this is the top elevation.
Correct.
This is top elevation. This is the portion I have here is because it's a hillside area. We don't have that big of the backyard. I'm trying, to have the rooftop deck for enjoying the view and open space. This portion, it's the stairs that is going to the roof. And otherwise, these are what do you want to that I
Stairs
show you?
going to the
Yeah, stairs going to the
And is this area parapet, or is that a glass railing?
No, it's parapet.
And where is that occurring? On your south elevation?
Then all around I have
No,
parapet.
in the
wall.
south elevation?
In the south elevation,
Yeah, where's your roof deck located?
roof deck located, let me show you. The roof deck, it's located in this area.
And where would that be on that elevation?
On this elevation, will be on this area.
So you've raised the entire parapet of the entire roof area, whether there's a roof deck or no roof deck, it all has the
No,
same.
roof deck or no roof deck, it will be the same thing. It's the same height. I didn't raise the parapet or the height of, actually, because the living area has the higher ceiling. This portion of the roof, it's higher than the remaining portion. As you see here, the finished floor, it's 886, this is 884. So that portion of the roof, it's 2 feet higher than this. And I'm using just this area for the roof deck.
So your parapets are,
42 inch, the regular parapet that is.
so say it's 887.
887.
And then your finished floor is
Finished floor.
75. So there should be about a 14-foot wall. And what, are these 6'8" windows?
No,
These
those
are-
are 5 feet windows.
So where's the roof deck? I
The
believe
roof
those
deck-
parrots are going to be a little higher than depicted on that elevation.
I think, if I may, and this is not my area of thing, are you sure the roof deck's not over here?
It is above the wood-clad section, yes.
I don't think it's here.
Yeah, I agree.
I realize
Yeah.
that, but he's saying that all the parapets are the same height, and that's what I'm
I
trying to
do
figure
have
out.
here
he's
the
wrong.
section drawing, on this area, I have the 3 feet high parapet wall, 3 feet parapet wall, and just on the top of the staircase that which I have just.
So basically, the parapets are different. They're not all the same.
87, 89 and a half.
They are different.
They're different.
On this portion, it's different. You can see here.
And approximately how many cubic yards of dirt are being Exported?
Almost 14,000.
1,400.
And that's the export.
That's the cut, I believe.
The cut, staff report's 1280 is cut with 140 fill.
Yeah, it's still it's
So it's
almost
so it's about 11 and change.
11 and change, okay.
Quick math.
Do we have any more questions for the applicant?
I have several, but I think I'll wait.
Okay. I had one last question, which was your window types. What sort of windows are you proposing?
The windows, we are proposing the fiber, natural fiber glass.
And those awnings above the windows, are those of metal? What is it? What material is it?
Then I thought could be just the frame and the same, stock on top, or could be metal too. I can go metal too, but I didn't call the material, just I call it painted eyebrows.
Then for the roof deck itself, you have some cables, or is it a glass system above the garage door?
Above the garage door, it's a cable.
And the roof deck?
Roof deck cable.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. The next speaker is Hiromi Sato. Welcome. And if you would just introduce yourself for the record.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm Hiromi Sato. I live at 1609 Gladys Drive, next to the proposed project. My husband and I think this project to design is basically nice. I just want to express some of our concerns. First, I'm sure that the engineering department will have to approve this plan. However, the backside of the house facing Luring Drive is very close to the edge of the steep slope. That hillside is extremely loose, decomposed granite that is always falling down onto Luring Drive. Please make sure that the construction will be safe and then the hillside will be stable. Second, according to their plan, they are going to excavate and cut the hillside. Our property is on the west side, or maybe north side, of their property. We will be very insecure because our home is below the project at the bottom of a very steep slope. We'd like to know how they are going to excavate the hill safely without causing erosion now and in the future. Third, also, there is a large mature California pepper tree near the border of our property and the edge of the hill. It seems like they are going to cut down the tree. I know that the California pepper tree is not a protected species, but I'm sure that the tree roots are preventing erosion. I wish they can save the tree or prune it back. So if they really need to cut down the tree, please make sure it will be done very, very carefully because our garage is directly below the tree. Fourth, street parking on Gladys is already very limited. Now we are allowed to park only the north side of Gladys Drive. I'd like to keep the right of our street parking on the north side of Gladys Drive, the same as it is now. Thank you for your consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Richard Alper.
I'm Richard Alper, 1609 Gladys. And first, I want to address one of the comments about the encroachment. Our house, original owners, with the previous owners, owned our property and both the lots that the project is on. And so they built that garage with permits in 1963. We haven't changed the structure or changed the location of that. And so it's been there for 50 or 60 years. And it's mischaracterized in the plans as a guest house, but it's not a guest house.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just address that point. Since I raised that point, let me explain on the record what my concern was. The information in front of us was that this was a guest house.
It's
and
not
therefore,
a guest house.
and may I finish? And therefore, one of the things that we look at is privacy concerns from public parts of the property that is being suggested. And because of the close proximity of the corner of that proposed project to what is being demarked on the plans and what was in front of us as a guest house, I wanted to clarify the distance between that structure and the structure that's being proposed. Mm-hmm. And when there is a issue with lot lines, which does happen on hillside lots more often than not, I wanted to make sure that there is a substantial distance, and it's been clarified on the record that it's about 10 feet. Mm-hmm. So that was the reason that I brought that issue up.
Okay. Well, just like I said.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, that the people owning all three properties weren't as concerned about the precise locations of things. And so, anyway, as Hiromi stated earlier, our property is located below the slope, maybe 20 or 30 feet down a steep slope from that property. We have a long driveway where we park tandemly, and then our house is located rectangularly along the driveway, and then the garage at the end of the driveway. And so our concerns are primarily about the geology of the area. As you know, the neighborhood has quite a history of ongoing issues related to the failures of the slopes. And so we just want to make sure that if and when the construction is done, that it's done in a way that considers that slope that would really protect our property and the safe enjoyment of our house. And the other thing, which you already brought up, is the parking. It's only allowed on one side of the street. All four houses bordering the property on either side and across the street are dependent on the street parking now, and eliminating that would cause a little bit of a burden on all of us. And so anyway, that's all I have to say, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Rob Sharkey. Sure. You could also, if you want, lean it right behind the podium, and we'll see it. Unless you want to use it as a presentation tool, then we could put up an easel, of course.
Or on that side.
Good evening.
Good evening, board members.
If you would just introduce yourself.
Rob Sharkey. My wife Dottie and I live at 1610 Gladys Drive. And in addition, I'll be speaking for our beloved neighbor, Liz DeVaness, who lives at 1609 Ina Drive.
Right. And I have a speaker card from her, and I realize that you, because of some issues, you are going to be speaking on her behalf as well. And
I would
so
like to.
once you finish your portion, which you're limited to 3 minutes, or you could take less, of course, if you'd like, then you would conclude it, and then you would reintroduce yourself as speaking on the behalf of Liz DeVaness after I introduce her.
I'll be under 5 minutes.
But you just got to break it up into 2.
Whatever you say.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, thank you. It's nice to be here. First, I'd like to call your attention to a possible correction that needs to be made. The application for this design review was apparently based on some misinformation. It was filed in June 2015, as you see here, listing 2 abutting lots. There they are. One on Gladys over there, the other on Loring. Here's the one on Loring right here. But beneath the heading here, all property owners must sign this application. Only one name is listed, that of Armin Musadarian. Tonight's staff report, in fact, also lists the same 2 lots and indicates that the owner is Armin Musadarian. However, there's always a but here, right? The county assessor and the county recorder's records, plus a private title search, indicate Mr. Musadarian does not own the Loring Drive lot. That lot was in fact purchased by another individual a year before this design review application was ever filed, and that its ownership, this lot, that its ownership remains unchanged.
Okay. Well, we'll make a note of that, and then we could actually have staff look into that to see what exactly the matter is.
Yeah, please, we'd appreciate that. It seems like it may have some bearing on this. If I can go on. Quote, Gladys is a substandard street, and development of this property would compound the parking and driving conditions, which would be detrimental to the general public welfare. End quote. These were the words of the Glendale Board of Zoning Adjustments when it denied an earlier project on this site a few years ago. That denial was upheld by the City Council on a motion from Councilman Ara Najarian. Today, Gladys is faced with a proposal for a 4-bedroom, 4-bath house with a garage, enclosed pool deck, and an elevator. Excuse me? Where am I? What does that mean?
You went past the initial 3 minutes. We did have some questions for you, and Mr. Charchian went back and forth. Let's add another minute to the original time, and if you would finish up within a minute, and then we'll reintroduce you and speaking on behalf of the second speaker. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Sorry to cause you so many problems.
You're not causing any problems. This is wonderful, and we could ask questions on this when you're done. So the 1 minute starts from now.
Today, Gladys is faced with a proposal for a 4-bedroom, 4-bath house with a garage, enclosed roof deck, and an elevator, which at over 3,200 square feet, according to the staff report, would make it the largest house in our neighborhood. However, this site is extremely steeply sloped. In fact, the Loring side is truly vertical. Even the city staff report says that this site has, quote, a 50% or greater average slope. Doesn't say how much greater, but 50% or greater. To hold the house in place, its geotech report recommends drilling piles at least 15 feet into rock. It says the bedrock here is moderately hard, quote, and may pose a challenge with regard to excavation. What does that mean? Does that imply blasting will be needed? Mr. Nazarian just told us that the project was designed to minimize the grading. However, to create flat building pads, the staff report says a net total of 1,140 cubic yards of dirt would have to be cut from the site. That equals about 95 dump truck loads. Plainly, Gladys Drive would probably have to be closed off during part of the construction. Board members, with its massive size, sheer slopes, extensive grading, and army of dump trucks, this project does present challenges to life and property. Gladys Drive was built in 1929. It's 87 years old, according to some very obsolete standards. What does that mean?
Thank you for asking. That concludes your portion.
Okay.
So I realize that there's some complications with the next speaker and that you were going to speak on their behalf. As that, the next speaker is Liz DeMeneses.
Liz DeMeneses, and she lives at 1609 Ina Drive.
That's right. And for the record, you, Mr. Sharkey, are going to, I guess, speak on her behalf.
I am.
Is that
I'm speaking on Liz's behalf.
That's fine. Wonderful. Thank you. Proceed.
Gladys Drive was built in 1929. That's 87 years old. According to long obsolete standards, Gladys is only 18 feet wide, curb to curb, has a 15% upgrade, 6 blind slopes, limited parking, and no secondary emergency access in case of, say, a fire. Gladys also does have frequent landslides. One slide, you will remember, I'm sure, buried 2 homes and several cars. Miraculously, no one was killed, but 3 homes were red or yellow tagged, and their owners sued the city. In court, a geologist testified that the fragile geology of that collapsed slope was consistent throughout Gladys, not just in that slide area. According to the news press, the city settled that lawsuit for over $12 million. Over $12 million. Board members, please take heed. Gladys is a substandard, antiquated street, and development of this property would compound the parking and driving conditions, which would be detrimental to the general public welfare. It is unimaginable that Gladys Drive should now be targeted for the biggest house in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Sharkey, I have some questions.
Sure,
If
please.
you would leave the board up, because we do appreciate you taking the time to bring the board. If you would, can you just walk us through the imagery?
Sure.
Obviously, there was an intent in including certain images, and just walk us through, because we do appreciate you taking the time to bring it.
This is the Gladys frontage lot from directly across the street from our property. Gladys Drive begins right here. It's 18 feet wide. This is looking directly up. Here are the California pepper trees that Hiromi mentioned a few minutes ago. They would be torn out to build this. As you can see, holes. Uprooting those will create some real problems. So this lot, it's sort of a wrap-around combination. Wraps around the back of Rick and Hiromi's house, and connects here, looking down the luring.
That's
the
right.
luring lot.
And that wooden fence where you're, at that image
That's
you're
Rick and
painting at,
Hiromi's.
where is that wooden fence? Is that wooden fence the same wooden fence we see next to the garage on the right image?
This.
That's right.
That's
Okay.
their property.
And where did that slide occur on the bottom left image?
This?
Yes.
About a month ago on the upper portion of Gladys. This is another one of the many areas.
And that's not what the lawsuit was about, obviously.
No, it's not.
Okay. And the image at the bottom,
This?
second from the left?
Yes.
That's right.
This is here looking down
From what point?
from here. Looking down. You know, I'm sure you're familiar with this house.
Right.
And you're familiar with these houses. They're
Yes.
still there. They're still everything. See,
They've had a long history, yes.
Actually auctioned them off, but still there.
Okay.
So,
Thank you very much.
Sure.
We got to be mindful of time, but I did want to get a better sense as to the imagery. If you would, just move that board right where the calendar is, so the board could refer to it if we need to, unless, do you want?
No, that's a perfect spot for it.
That way, we could see the audience. Thank you so much, sir.
I have one other question. Mr.
Please, go ahead.
You meant, Sir, you mentioned that there's a deed issue. Do you have a copy of the document that would indicate that that other property is deeded to someone else?
I have the assessors. I don't have with me the county recorders, and would it help to see the assessors? Correct?
May I just interject one moment on that subject?
Sure.
I was going to bring it up at the end. What I'd like to have staff think about is the relevance of that information and how it pertains to the application. And then at that point in time, we could see if it is relevant, how they would like us to handle it. I'm not sure if they'll be able to get to the bottom of it at this hearing.
And the reason that I'm inquiring in my thinking about this is if in fact we have a situation where we have a property that is not owned by the applicant, and we have an area that has been subject to litigation against the city in the past, I would think that it would behoove us potentially, depending on what staff's comments are, to have this postponed on our own motion to a time where staff can clarify this issue before we end up deliberating on the merits of the design. Because the matter might be moot for us as far as the design application.
Yeah.
And if it's a moot point, I'd rather not go into design aspects if we don't have the purview to do it.
Very good. Then what we'll do is, sir, we're going to continue with the public portion of the hearing. Staff, if you would, try to think about that and what's the best way for us to address that. If it is relevant, number one, and number two is if we're able to clarify that this evening with the limited staff that we have after hours. And third, just if you would comment on that at the end of the public presentation.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Ms. Dottie Parkland. Sharkey, that's right.
As in Rob.
Wow, the K has a very long leg to it. That's all right. Ms. Sharkey, good evening. Introduce your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Dottie Sharkey. I live at 1610 Gladys Drive. And when I first saw the design of the house, I very much like it, and I still do. But when I saw the addition of 4 bedrooms looming over our neighbor's property, I now have concerns. The house is just too large for our narrow, substandard street. Just this year, police were knocking at our door at 2, 3 in the morning, asking if the car parked in front of the Gladys Drive lot was mine. It wasn't. But apparently there was a car dangling over the edge up the hill on Gladys, and the fire truck couldn't get up with the crane to get through. Another time we had a truck fall over the unprotected side of Gladys, plunge 200 feet. No one was hurt, but unfortunately a dog was killed. And just this spring, after a rainy day, we had yet another mudslide. And as you know, mudslides are common on Gladys Drive. What else worries me, a 4-bedroom house will possibly have cars that will park on our narrow street, most likely across from our driveway, making it very difficult and perhaps dangerous in case of emergency for us to pull out. And in the 1990s, we had a fire coming down the hill on 3 sides. So you can see my concern of trying to get out of our driveway as quickly as possible. Our neighbors have been very considerate all these years and have not parked directly across from our driveway. I have no objection to a home being built, but it must be scaled down to avoid these hazardous conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Ms. Sharkey. As my 6-year-old son would say, that's fancy writing, so it's hard to
Sorry
read.
about that.
Just kidding.
Crystal, today I was nervous.
I should have asked the previous speakers as well, but did the applicant meet with any of the neighbors
Not
that you're aware of?
No, and we have a lot next door to our home, and it's directly across from the applicant. So no, we've heard nothing.
Okay. Thank you.
The first was the story poles.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have another speaker card here with illegible handwriting. It's Anna.
R.M.
R.M. Sanders.
Yes.
Good evening.
Hi. Okay.
If you would introduce yourself for the record, and thank you for coming down.
Thank you. Good evening. First of all, my name is Anna Sanders. I live at 722 Luring Drive, and our neighborhood is like really a beautiful, quaint neighborhood. We've lived there 25 years, and my concern really is that everybody's entitled to building on their property, right? But this house is actually looming over their home, our neighbor's home, just like I live in a very small home where it sits in the background, and my neighbors, which are lovely neighbors, they loom over my home. So the privacy issue is a big one for me. Anybody now, if this goes through, anybody in the neighborhood, because we have older homes that are entitled, when they purchase, to revamp these homes. And they can build higher homes. And they can loom over everybody's home. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think it is just too large of a project in that one area. Not to mention it is a fragile area. We have mudslides like the Sharkies had mentioned. We have fires that could possibly happen, which we do have limited accessibilities for the police or the firemen to come through. Let me see. Gladys would be just like people who reside up there would be miserable because they can't go through. I think they had been told to go the other way. I think when they were actually fixing the infamous Ganji house. Do we all know about that infamous house that is still there? And it didn't budge, but it was a problem when it was raining and the mud came tumbling down. So nature has a way of finding a way to kind of just wreak havoc on the homes that live in the hillside. So for me, anything, I would have to say that they just really have to do their research better. And I think that putting caissons on a very fragile hill is just asking for trouble. It's like opening up Pandora's box. It would be very dangerous to do so. So anyway, that's my thing on this whole thing.
Thank you very much.
I didn't write anything, so I'm really sorry. It became very, very unprepared. But hopefully I explained myself.
You spoke from the heart, and that's the important thing.
Thank you. All right.
The next speaker is Ivan Stepanovic. Good evening.
Nice to meet you.
And thanks for taking the time to come down. Introduce yourself for the record.
Sure. Ivan Stepanovic. I live at 728 Luring Drive. Been there 30-plus years. Great neighborhood. Didn't write things down, but a couple of items. Item number one is I would recommend that the board check into the lawsuit that occurred because of the Ganji house. It'll give you some insight. I think item number two, I think you really need to take a physical inspection. Rick and Hiromi's property, which basically it abuts Luring Drive and also Gladys. They have I don't know how gun-eyed the dirt around their property, and when you look at Luring and you're looking at the backside of the proposed development, you're looking literally straight up. I'd say probably at least 20 to 25 feet up. So the question basically is you know over the years I was there when we had the fires, and I was there. We live on the corner. And when we bought our house, I was so impressed because we have a fire hydrant in front of our house. And the last thing I ever thought would be to worry about a fire. I used to brag to my wife, I said, we have a fire hydrant, that'll never be an issue. Guess what? When the fire came, the fire department literally, fire started at approximately 1 o'clock. I was there till I left work to come by because my wife saw some smoke.
This is the recent fire that occurred.
We're talking about 25 years ago.
Oh, because there was another one right in that neighborhood about 2 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, it's scary. It jumps. They do magic acts with fire.
I saw it occurring. The one 2 or 3 years ago.
Isn't that incredible? The concern basically is I live on Luring and Ein on the corner. Fire hydrant in front. The fire department did not get to our house to probably about 6:30. And the idea behind that was that they ended up having to, instead of coming down from Gladys, they had a locked gate there. They basically came in through the Glen Oaks, Glenmore area up. It's the design to the house that's in front of you. I think it's a nice design. I mean, it's exciting to see that, but I think you guys really have to look at the compaction, look at the area carefully. I do think that the issue regarding if you look at Hiromi's and Rick's property, with the dirt being literally moving all the time, so they had to gun-hide it. I guess it's called gun-hide it. It basically is sort of a telltale. So the other thing that's one just real quick item.
15 seconds.
Yeah. The only other item is the moving of dirt. I mean, it's a lot of dirt being moved, and we live in a quiet neighborhood, and obviously we live in the hillside, and it's expected to have some moving dirt. But I think it should be questioned.
Thank you.
How much? Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I have no more speaker cards. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this project? Yes, come on up, introduce yourself, and then you could give staff your speaker card when you're done.
Sure, thank you. Hi, my name's Annette Herzog. I live at 1623 Gladys, and so I'm directly north of the project being proposed. I have three main concerns. It's a beautiful design, but my three concerns as a resident mirror some of the things you've heard already. Parking is always an issue for us already. We can only park on the north side of the street, and that's already limited. This driveway would actually remove most of that parking space, so there would be almost no street parking after that. There's a little bit north of my house, but it's very dangerous because of the curvature of the road. It's difficult to see cars coming up and down, and I don't even recommend my guests park there. The second issue for me, which is very big, is privacy. I'm not sure if the roof, it looks like there's a flat roof. So the top of the stakes that are currently on the property, the roof deck that they're proposing will look directly into my master bathroom, and then it will also look directly into the only window into the fourth bedroom in my house. So it will be very, very uncomfortable for me at that point. And it's one of the reasons that I purchased the property. I don't know if you noticed, but I just shook hands here with my neighbors because I've never met them. That's intentional. I moved there so that I could have privacy, and with this project, that won't be possible anymore because people will be able to see directly into my home. My third issue is safety. We have a lot of mudslides and rock slides. I was very concerned about the city settlement and even for my own property, what the implications might be for my home. And so the idea that there's going to be more drilling, more excavating, more disturbing of the hillside, it concerns me a lot for my safety, for my family, etc. And then along the same issue of safety is the fire and police access. We recently had, as my neighbors described, a night at 2 o'clock in the morning where the police and fire had to wake everybody up and ask us to move cars out of the street so that they could gain access up the hill. And my concern is that that will be further compounded in those situations. Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Those you mentioned the master bathroom and a bedroom that are impacted. Are those on the first level or second level of your home?
Third, if you count the garage. Third level.
We have a garage on the ground level. Second and third, and both those spaces are impacted on the third level.
Yes, and well, the second level is also my dining room. I will lose the view completely, but that's something that I don't feel is a real reason for somebody to not build a home on their property. I can live with that, but into my master bath and into the only window available for one of the bedrooms is problematic, very problematic for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Collin, can you remind the board or Mr. Platt the privacy rules? Because I know they've been discussed extensively in the past. It's It's been a little while since we reviewed, and I was just wondering if very quickly if somebody could just opine on that.
You want to? Privacy is defined in the code as the view from the property in question from any public rooms, which would include living room, dining room, family room, or any outdoor deck space or balcony over 40 square feet. So in this case, the deck on the roof is over 40 square feet, so there could be some issues with privacy. In the past, the board has conditioned designs to try to pull users of that deck away from the edge facing a property, which could reduce or eliminate any of those sightline issues. So that could be an option here. So there are ways to mitigate it through design, if the board chooses.
Sorry, those changes.
We can't have cross communication. I'm sorry. Do we have any questions on Mr. Platt on the privacy matter? No. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Platt. Gaurav Nazarian, you have an opportunity for a rebuttal. So if you would reintroduce yourself, and you have several minutes to provide your thoughts on some rebuttal.
Yeah, Gaurav Nazarian with Domus Design. I have to issue this hillside slope model slide. This is one of the projects. When Bakhtikian called me on the design review board stage, they asked me to provide the source report. I wondered, why on the design review board stage? Each project on the hillside, as everybody knows, has to provide a source report, and the excavation, footings, everything will be built based on the source engineer recommendation. And a slide again. Right now, it's an undeveloped hill there. When I developed this lot, by having that retaining walls in the backyard area, I will stabilize more that slope, so that danger, that hazard, it will be reduced based on my opinion. The second thing is the parking issue. On the R1 zone, as you know, the zoning ordinance, it's requiring the front setback 15 feet for the house, 18 feet for the parking garage. Why that 18 feet gives opportunity to that project to have additional parking in the front of the garage. If you check the project, my garage is sitting back about 35 feet back from the property. If I just open a curb cut, that is the right of each property owner to build, but we think that it will help the park, at least this project, it won't give a very, negative impact to the parking issue in the street, because on this project, at least 5 cars they can park on the property without parking in the street. The other issue that I want to discuss, this gentleman mentioned that a few years ago the project it has been rejected. I wasn't aware of that even. I did find out about 2-3 days ago. The project was presented only on one lot, on the Gladys Drive lot. When they rejected because of the lot area issue, that the minimum should be so much to be buildable, just having one lot, it was not buildable. The project, it's been rejected because of that. And the ownership issue, I know that there are 2 guys involved together. They are in the partnership, but it has been told to me that the title it's with the one person name, but that it shouldn't be any legal issue because they are in the partnership. If it is not, and even by having building crossing the property line, that it will become a one parcel. And I know 2 guys involved. My clients are 2 persons that they are in the partnership to build this house.
Okay.
2 relatives.
So, Mr. Nazarian, do you have any other comments? Ringing ears. Let's go.
No, I don't. And I wanted to tell that this is not the biggest house in the area. If you look to this aerial photo of the area, you see these big, massive buildings, 3-4 story buildings. And this is the building next to the property.
Thank you. Well, we're out of time, but I know Mr. Charchian has some time for you, or multiple questions. Thank you for these. We'll review them as Mr. Charchian is going through his questions.
Okay. So you're representing now to the board that your application omitted a potential owner. Is that right?
The owner, not potential.
Okay.
It is owner.
You stated right now that your clients are two individuals that are in a partnership. The owner listed on the application is an Armen Musadarian. So you are stating to us now that there's another individual who is involved in this project, who is a potential owner. Is that correct?
Okay.
Okay. Do you have the ability to tell us the first name of this potential owner or partner in this project?
Armik.
Okay. Is there a reason why the gentleman, you said there was a gentleman, Armik is not listed as an owner on the project?
When the clients, they come to me, I ask who is the owner. They are giving me a name.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Now, let me ask the design questions that I wanted to clarify on. Okay. You were asked to provide a soils report for a design report. Okay. And do we have a soils engineer report from? Because I did not see that in the package.
Yes, Board Member Charchian. This project was circulated twice to all the city departments for comments. And the first time the Public Works Engineering Division requested a soils report. A soils report was prepared and circulated again to all the divisions, and the comment was that the site is buildable with the soils report's recommendation. So the soils report did not indicate that the site is not buildable.
And that, because we have to consider on a hillside lot, we have to consider the cut and fill issue. Even though this does not exceed the 1,500 cubic yards, was the soil report prepared with the understanding that there was going to be approximately 1,200 or 1,140 square feet of dirt removed?
The soils report was prepared for this particular proposal. And in addition to that, if the project is approved, when the project is submitted for a building permit, a more detailed report will be a more detailed soils report will be prepared at that point. Okay. But this is a preliminary report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff at this point in time?
I do. Yes. Did staff clarify the issue of ownership of the other lot? Or were they able to?
Mr. Charchian, at this point we don't have access to ownership information, but whatever was presented to us in the application, we use that information. And this goes for all design review projects. When it comes time for permitting or a different type of permit entitlement, like for a variance or conditional use permit, we request affidavits at that point. But for design review, we base it on whatever's presented in the application, because just the design at this point is the subject of the review, and this is not the permitting part.
I understand that. My concern is I don't want to move forward and have a deliberation on design if the issue is moot. However, with the representations made by the applicant that there is actually a potential other party, I'm comfortable, Mr. Chair, moving forward as long as the application is then at some point supplemented with a signature of any potential co-owners. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and close the public portion. Mr. Charchian, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I think the overall design has tried to address the unique conditions that this type of lot presents. However, I think that there is many enhancements to the design that could assist in having a more appropriate property on this street. There are some existing houses on this street and in this neighborhood that if they were built today would not be in conformity with the hillside guidelines. And so I think when we look at this home, we have to ask ourselves, is this house in conformity with the design guidelines? And I think that there's some massing issues, especially, and some visual issues too. I'm going to just limit my discussions as to two concern areas. One, this area using this uniform cladding material, this wood cladding, when looked from the southern elevation, just presents this gigantic mass, when really it's a broken down volume when looked at from the street view. So I think we can ask the applicant to play with this volume here to not have it just be so uniform and give this appearance of mass, especially since that's going to be the view going up Gladys. Additionally, I have concerns about how the applicant is addressing the rooftop area, the parapet heights, and maybe not having the need for a parapet. Additionally, I believe the applicant, I saw in his hand, but it was not mentioned, it looked like you had some sort of sample or some sort of suggested material board for the split-face concrete block that he mentioned. I saw it in his hand, but I didn't see it presented here, and I think that if that is being suggested, we should have that sample board if the applicant can approach. I think that the retaining wall, especially the one that's so close to the northern property, is important for stable extinguisher, and this is what I was referring to here, is important, and I think that a split-face block, as suggested, could be appropriate as long as it's the right kind of split-face. There's a lot of product on the market, and the color and the texture and the variation of the actual split needs to be something that is closely considered by staff to make sure that it's appropriate and goes with the hillside effect. I liked your earlier suggestion or comment about breaking down the retaining wall in the front of the house or on the southern elevation to give it a couple of tiers to introduce more landscaping, and with concerns about stability, slope stability, I think that would be even a better approach. In general, I think that the materials board for this project has to be more specific. It is unclear what materials are being used in these eyebrows, in the railing, and so forth. And I think that if that is left as an open question, it can create problems down the road. So I would want some more specification as to those materials and also color palette. It's unclear what the eyebrows are, if they're the same as the awning, if they're the same as the handrail. On top of the second and third floor areas, the third floor being the roof deck, I apologize, the roof deck area and the other balconies. So I want to make sure that we have specifications on those items as well. I'm mixed. I'm mixed as to my thinking on whether or not this needs to come back. I think that the legal aspects, the geotechnical aspects can be addressed by staff. I wanted to raise them here and try to make sure that we had them on the record because the public did raise it, but I think staff is able to deal with those. But I'm not sure if the design is fine-tuned enough for an approval with conditions at this time.
Thank you, Mr.
I would appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Mr. Bellion.
I tend to agree with Mr. Charshian on some of the issues he raised, and if I may approach. One of the issues is the use of one material deciding in this area here. I think it seems bulky. This volume here seems bulky. And to wrap up the whole volume with the same kind of material, you're doing the opposite of breaking up the mass. So I think this needs to be looked at further. In terms of the overall massing of the project, when you look at the elevations, they're kind of tricky, and in the beginning I wasn't very pleased with the design, but when you start looking at the 3D, it kind of I started to see the staff comments into like how this design is following the topos and addressing all that. So I'm kind of fine with the overall massing. I also agree with Mr. Charshin in terms of the material. I mean, the architect was very unclear in terms of the specification of the certain materials. It's like I can go either way. You need to be a little more specific on that. But I'm not sure if that needs to come back for redesign, because, I mean, we can put conditions that be very specific on specifying the awnings and the railing and all that, and I think that's something that staff can handle. So that's about it.
Thank you. So this evening, there are only 3 of us. Usually there's 5 board members, in which case we get a broader perspective on projects. However, I think the main points have been brought up. And now under the new procedures, which has been around for a while anyways, this board, design review board, actually looks at site planning, grading, etc., as part of the process as well. We have a tricky site in that it has some steep slopes, and in addition to that, it has dual frontages, coupled with the fact that it's in an area that has had slope stability issues in the past and continues to do so. So all those add to the concerns, and of course, we have neighbors that have come out and bringing up these issues for the board to assess as we look at things holistically. These sort of upslope properties, as we're talking from Lurig, and when we look at it from Lurig's point of view, is we have this very steep portion in this area, and as we look at the elevation, we can kind of see how the building just kind of pops up, and so some of the comments that I think are appropriate for this project, very similar to the other board members, is that we could really help with the site stability in this area. So, we have an elevation of 840 here, say curbside off of Lurig, and then we have a finish slab of 875 for this level. So that's a 35-foot, sheer wall. So I think multiple garden walls in this area would alleviate a lot of the issue, in that right now the hill's like this. When we do the multiple garden walls, we could actually create more of a gradual slope. So say, for example, if there's a garden wall, a 5-foot high wall at 850 contour, that takes us up to 855, then they do a 1-to-1 to another garden wall that sticks up 5 feet, 1-to-1 to another one. What that does is really takes care of the erosion matter, and then coupled with maybe just a 1-foot curb at the bottom of the street. So if there's any dirt that falls down, will get stopped by this curb wall. Those type of concepts, I think, are essential for these type of uphill properties in these kind of impacted areas. Additionally, we have an 875 finished slab here, and then we have the neighboring property at 890, 895, 900. So at this point, there's literally a 25-foot difference, 30-foot difference, 35-foot difference. So this is another area where I think, multiple garden walls, which they've started to do in this area. However, these walls are getting to be 8-9 feet tall at some areas because there's only one here. And incorporating another wall here would certainly help that. Now, why is that essential? Because you could kind of see in elevation these multiple garden walls, and you're going to certainly see them from the neighborhood coming up. So multiple garden walls in this area and in this area will alleviate some of these issues as far as site planning is concerned. As far as the material, I don't think block walls is the best way to go. It's the most economical and least expensive way to go. However, when you're just doing this amount of it, they tend to pop up. So if we have board form concrete or if you have any kind of poured in place concrete, they tend to basically blend a lot better into the landscape. What that also does is gives us an opportunity to plant between the walls, plant underneath the walls. As we plant over the walls, they drape down, and all of a sudden we have kind of a nice drop tolerant hillside. And that could be in the form of rosemaries and lantanas, and also coyote bush. So those are really good in the hillside areas there, and they'll grow really well, and they'll drape over the walls.
Mr. Simone, would that require an irrigation plan then to be submitted along with the landscaping plan?
Not so much as an irrigation plan, but the landscape plan will certainly be revised.
We do always ask for an irrigation plan, though, in conjunction with the landscape.
What the multiple garden walls, what it would also do is we would end up, this is not a true depiction of the site as you look from, Lurig, but imagine if this was steeper, you would get walls coming up. This wall would get minimized by a gradual raising of the grade, and similarly in this area as well. So that, I think, those comments would at least address site orientation, site layout, etc. What I think the applicant has done a really good job on is this long driveway. This long driveway that kind of comes in, it provides actually room for 4 or 5 cars to get parked there, alleviates kind of the use of street parking. It's also a good way to use the site. So overall, the design concept, let's just say, is in the right direction. Now, as far as the size of it is concerned, of course, this whole wing over here adds to the mass. And I believe some of these garden walls would certainly eliminate it, coupled with really differentiation in the materials here. Just the way this block wall ends and then the siding starts, it's not a proper way to treat this hillside area. So as far as this roof deck is concerned to the neighbor, I mean, we could consider just having a solid parapet there so they don't really look into the neighbor's master bedroom as much. So if someone's sitting on the roof deck having a cup of coffee, they're not looking through a transparent opening. They're kind of looking above the guardrail, the 30, 42-inch parapet, in which case the neighbor might not be as impacted. But overall, I think those are the crucial things, is dealing with the site planning here and here, and then, of course, specifying the materials, such as type of windows, these awnings, how these details work, more of a precise kind of a parapet heights, where we start to understand how the parapets interrelate. I was asking the applicant those questions. They were kind of rhetorical questions, but the intent is there needs to be more detail. So those are my comments as well. Sorry. So the question becomes which way is the board leaning? And I guess what we could first do is try to get a list of conditions together and then assess what the right approach should be after that.
Sure thing. And let me go through my notes. We will, to address some of the massing issues, it sounds like the board is unanimous in looking at siding materials, how they're placed on the volumes, particularly the volume at the family room, living room at the front of the building, where we have 2 large square volumes with the same cladding material that looks pretty massive. At the roof deck, from Board Member Charchian, there was a concept of no parapet. I wasn't sure where you were going, or was that the railing issue?
Well, we're in conflict. I was thinking that you could reduce the, thank you, you could reduce the parapet a little bit and introduce a railing material, but then Chairman Simonian brought up the issue of maybe that would create a privacy issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so it could, potentially create a privacy issue. And so covering this, you were saying this area instead of railing parapet. We're kind of split on that. I think that some sort of material change has to happen here. And that's really my concern. Some sort of material contrast has to happen here. Otherwise, and should definitely not match this stucco mess here.
Mm-hmm. It could be a change in color, perhaps a mixture of vertical and horizontal siding, something. Because those are two separate volumes. In the render or in the elevation, they look like they're merged, but it's two square volumes.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, there's almost like three volumes here.
Right, you see it better there.
Three.
Right.
But when you look at it from the view side of the street, it's an optical illusion in some respects.
And I think
bad optical illusion.
I appreciate and understand that concern, and I think that's something we could handle through siding changes and material changes, color changes also. In terms of that roof deck losing the railing, one thing that might happen there is it could add to a more massive quality, so we could add as part of that condition to make sure that the design, perhaps the railing is set back from the edge of the roof or some other way to relieve the massing at that location.
Another option might be some sort of a mansard roof, which would create a different type of roof, and then behind the mansard roof could be the roof deck.
That's an option.
It's an option for them to consider as far as really differentiating itself and having more of a roof material.
And I think that there was some consensus with Mr. Billen, and at least I share the concern, if I may, up here. This volume that's really designed for the stairs to the roof deck, I think, can be softened. Just a very boxy volume.
Like an eyesore.
But if you think
do you really need it? Do you really need it at that point? Can this part get cut off? And
sure, if you look at the landings of the stairs and the way they go down, that whole roof could
be sloped too.
Yeah, it could slope down.
So we will ask to have the design of the roof, the stair bulkhead, reduced probably through a sloped roof and possibly change of material. At the bulkhead, we will ask that the retaining walls at all the locations that we're talking about, I believe, be board form concrete or poured in place concrete rather than split face block or stone veneer. At various locations, we'll introduce the concept of these tiered walls that are stepping down the hillside, which will address some of the erosion issues, as well as kind of soften the appearance of height on the walls and reduce the mass. That will particularly be at the facade overlooking Loring, at the south facade where the stucco wall is with the canopies, and then also at the northeast on the other side of the garage, to the right of the garage entry. So we'll introduce additional walls in those locations. We will ask that the designer clarify all materials.
On that note, Mr. Platt, also, I think there's been enough comments made that off of Lurig, to have like a 1 foot curb.
Right. That's further down my notes, but yes, I've got it. We'll clarify the material palette. I'm guessing that for features like the eyebrows, the board would probably rather have a higher quality material than stucco, so we'll look for a metal cladding that may be another material we could introduce at other locations.
Well, for clarity's sake, it indicates, for example, painted awnings and guardrails, but doesn't specify what the material is underneath. Is that a wood material? Is that a metal material? Is that some other composite material? I think it's important to understand the material as well.
Yeah, that's I think.
So it probably shouldn't be wood. It should be metal clad.
Yeah, we were presuming it would either be stucco or metal, but the board often errs on the side, not errs, the guides on the side of going with a metal cladding material to just raise the quality of finishes.
And that could work really nice if he ends up with some sort of a metal mansard roof, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Might work in itself as a language.
Okay, we will add cladding, we will add additional planter walls, we'll add the 1-foot wall at the curb at Luring for anything that comes down the hill, more walls, and more differentiation of materials, the solid parapet at the front roof deck, which will also try to make sure the designer avoids making that look too massive in that location for that volume. And then there was a question that I wasn't sure to clarify issues about the parapet heights.
What was that, Mr. Platt?
I wasn't sure where the board was moving in terms of the parapet heights. My note says to clarify parapet heights, did you want to have more variety among some of the volumes to give it a livelier roof line, or?
I think it could all be considered holistically as you're going through the project. So starting off by the garage, moving over to the roof deck, and then moving over to the bedroom areas. If we don't need the parapets over the bedroom areas, then there's no need to add mass and bulk to the building, and those could go away.
Okay, we could eliminate parapets, or if we're introducing a mansard over the garage area, we might bring that to other facades.
I think that's the best way to deal with the hillside if they do a metal roof, because they could have almost a flat roof and the metal would work as if they have the bitchetine underneath it. Similarly, if it's like a natural based color, if you're looking at it from above, a blend in with the hillside third is the best material to have in a fire zone.
Okay, so we'll understand the parapets. We'll have a consideration to introduce a mansard roof at the front roof deck and then possibly at other locations. And then we've talked about softening the design of the bulkhead with sloped roof and possible material change. That's everything I got.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a few.
And the ownership, to clarify.
And of course, we'll clarify the ownership situation, and we'll verify if there are any issues. We'll verify the city has a real estate person plus our city attorney's office, but we'll make sure that ownership is solid and not an issue.
And I think that it might just be as simple as the other partner stepping forward and signing off on the documents that are in front of us. The railing. I just, if I may.
Yes, please.
As I was looking at the renderings, and maybe I'm missing something, but the entry stairs, not the exterior staircase, does that require railings by code?
It should. You're talking off of Gladys, right?
Right here. Where are they? They're not depicted, and. So, are they required? Number one, and if so, can we just put a condition that material is consistent with the rest of the features?
Yes, we'll add a condition to verify the necessity of railings at the entry stair and that its appearance and materials be consistent with
other. It looks
other.
like there's more than 4 steps, So
looking at it, I'm sure it needs a railing, even if it's at grade. So,
and I'd like to. It looks as though this might be something that staff is going to work on, let's say, based on the familiarity that they have and also the comments that staff is writing down. Now, Mr. Platt, I wanted to bring up the fact that when we are introducing rooftop decks in these hillside areas, which is a good idea, it is a good idea, the intent of it is to really minimize grading. And so if we are introducing a rooftop deck, then the intent is to have multiple garden walls in this yard area at the rear on the north side to reduce the amount of grading and the reduced amount of dirt that's being hauled away. So right now, if there's a net of 1,150 being exported, when we're adding all these retaining walls, several hundred cubic yards, 300-400 cubic yards of it is then going to go back into the site and isn't going to leave on the street. So I think that's something for us to consider, because if we're adding mass and bulk to the rooftop deck, which is a good idea because of the fact that it would actually eliminate grading in the rear, then we should really try to minimize this substantial grading in the rear and these 9-foot walls. So as you've already mentioned, the multiple garden walls, but I'm emphasizing it in that, to be fair, it's really one or the other. Shouldn't really be doing both, because then it's just not good site planning, but I think staff understands that.
We can add a condition to, if the roof deck is primary to the owner's wishes, we can ask to minimize the grading at the rear, the depth of the rear yard, and the number of walls possibly.
And then that way, less dirt will be hauled away.
Right.
So it'll come down, I think, even way below 1,000 with all these walls that we're adding.
And that's everything we've got.
Well, is the board comfortable with staff working with applicant on this long list of conditions to better the design and work out the details and make sure it's something that's compatible with the Hillside Design Guidelines?
Mr. Chairman, I would be comfortable if there's one other area that we can discuss, and that's the landscaping plan. And I revisited it, and I'm not anywhere close to a landscape architect or landscaping experience, that much landscaping experience, but it seems to me that some of the choices would not lead to what's being depicted in the renderings on the street view. My experience, for example, and I was just checking, one of the primary items that's being used is rosemary.
Mm-hmm.
And rosemary usually creeps across, but I haven't seen rosemary, be a large hanging item. So I defer to you. There's different variety. Yeah,
some do.
And so we want to make sure that what we're just being. I would feel, I would lean more towards approval with all these conditions if I knew that the landscape plan was cross-referenced to reflect what's in the renderings, which is this kind of hanging garden in the back, and I'm not seeing that right now.
It's a good point, and in fact, I brought it up in that when we're introducing these garden walls, the idea is to have the lantana, to have the coyote bush, and then to have the creeping rosemary is what it's called.
Right,
it drapes over. And
you said lantana. I wrote down Madonna. I wasn't sure what that
lantana,
was. Lantana.
And by the way, the yellow lantanas, or the yellow or the orange lantanas, depending on how you want to describe it, are the best for this kind of decomposed granite, and they grow really fast. I have decomposed granite in my backyard. I tried all the lantanas, and the yellow and the gold are the hardiest of them all. So, in essence, I do agree with Mr. Charchian that the retaining plan, the landscape plan will have to be revised in order to accommodate the new walls. Furthermore, there needs to be an emphasis on having the retaining walls covered, draped over, and minimized as much as possible with drought-tolerant material.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So does somebody want to entertain a motion?
I'll move for approval with the conditions.
I will second.
So we have a motion and a second. Roll call. Board Member Charchian?
Yes.
Board Member Bellion?
Yes.
And Chairman Simonian?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Our next case is PDR 1526749, which is 370 to 376 Salem. And Mr. Joe, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to approach the board and move the exhibits over.
Please.
This way?
Oh, I can get it. Because I push it. No, it's the other way.
You hit it
yeah, don't worry about it.
Okay.
We'll just leave it there and you can introduce it.
Thank you.
Not my fan. It's right here. This is what's left over. Oh, okay, great. That's...
The applicant had dropped off some renderings to revise here, and I'll pin it up where I can leave with you folks. Just leave up the board.
Real trooper.
I think we provide a lot of help.
I think. Mr. Joe, are you ready to kick us off?
I'm ready when you guys are.
We are ready, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, once again, this project is at 370 376 Salem Street. The location consists of 3 lots. Adjoining lots are approximately 18,000 square feet. They're all rectangular in shape and relatively flat. The zoning of this property is R1250, which is high-density residential. The surrounding uses of the property are multifamily and single-family, and the applicant proposes to demolish 3 existing single-family dwellings and construct a 21,376 square foot, 3-story multifamily residential building, which will consist of a unit composition of 15 two-beds, 3 one-bedroom units, and a semi-subterranean garage with 41 spaces. The CEQA determination on this property is Class 3-2, which is infill development. A historic resource report was prepared and determined that the 3 single-family homes currently on the lot are not considered a historic resource. Just as a correction on my staff report, the new development will be 21,376. I accidentally put in the project scope, it being the lot size of 18,000. So just for clarification, the floor area for this project will be 21,376 square feet. And also the CEQA determination is Class 3-2, which is infill development. I inadvertently put Class 3, which is small structures, which this is not. It was properly posted in the public notice as Class 32, just to clarify. So it is Class 32 infill development, and it's exempt from CEQA. Just to quickly go over the design analysis, the site planning. The new building will be centrally located on the site and will comply with all setback requirements. The project will include larger street front setbacks, which is along Salem Street around here, with a 1,750 square foot additional open space, creating a more open appearance from the street. Vehicle access will be from Salem, and the landscaping will be California-friendly, drought-tolerant planting. Mass and scale, particularly I'm just going to talk about the front facade, which is the north elevation right here. And I can kind of talk about staff's conditions about the other facades, but this is particularly about the front facade. The front facade is set back from Salem. It diminishes the massing of the street front, and particularly we're talking about the additional open space they're providing here. The project includes breaks in the walls, appropriate fenestration, and includes horizontal features such as a horizontal framing element, browse between the floor levels, and it has a thoughtful variety of colors and materials. On to design and detail. The project style of the contemporary design is cohesive with the eclectic styles exhibited throughout the neighborhood. The exterior finishes include stucco, limestone siding, wood side paneling, and will include recessed casement and fixed aluminum windows. The overall general textures, they're of quality materials, colors, fenestration is fitting with the design. Going on to staff's recommendations, staff overall recommends approval with the conditions of 1 being the redesign of the west elevation, which is the Columbus Street elevation, to be enhanced to continue the horizontal design of the front. And we would like to see that kind of continue along the west elevation here to articulate and translate over onto this facade. Number 2, the south and east elevation, which are less visible. The sense of horizontality also should be continued, but simpler elements such as incorporating color of the base color at the first level or change in cladding should be enhanced to the horizontal design. Third, the third floor balcony canopies should be redesigned to better integrate with the facades. Particularly, we're talking about these canopy on the third levels, which are on the east and south elevation. 4, which there's a gate at the unit 106, should be removed, and the adjacent planter should be extended in the front of the patio wall to increase the usable common area and create a meaningful separation between the private and common areas. What we're saying here is eliminate this gate here from their private space that directly leads into this additional open space, which has a very generous area for a barbecue and seating area. Eliminate this planter to create a larger space and make it more usable, and extend this planter out here so that it can create that separation. Condition number 5, provide details for window surrounds at the wood-clad bay adjacent to the main entrance facing Salem. Particularly, this is the east elevation. You can see there's like a surround that kind of projects outside the windows. We just would like a better understanding what's going on with these windows here. Frame around the screen element at the east elevation should match in color, material, and dimension of the framing elements on Salem Street facade. So we're talking about the horizontal framing elements here as it turns along the east elevation. This is the part right here. We just wanted this to continue the matching color, material. 8, the fence and...
I'm sorry, where would you like that to continue to, that last comment?
Well, what we're saying is we would like the, you know what, basically it's the screen element.
With the round circles?
Yes, with the round circles. Whatever's exhibited on the street front here, it should continue and translate also onto the east elevation.
Yeah, the issue is mainly the dimension shifted from the front elevation. When you wrapped around the side, it became a heavier frame element. We thought it would look better to have the same dimension, and then also for that entire frame to be wrapped in metal rather than be stucco.
I think I missed condition number 6, is metal cladding should be incorporated at the framing elements at the street-facing facades rather than proposed stucco. And once again, it's this framing element. Number 8, which was the wall fence elements above the semi-subterranean garage podium along the interior property lines facing Columbus Avenue, identified in the section drawing, which is this section drawing here. This is Columbus, and they're showing some walls over here, which they're not really depicted on the elevations nor on the site plan. So we just want some clarification on that. And we wanted to comply with the zoning code to combine height of the garage and any solid wall or solid fence on top of the garage in the setback area does not extend more than 6.5 feet. And just overall to comply with zoning code. Number 9, alternative options should be explored, possibly utilizing a lift at the area above the mechanical room located at the garage to simplify the hardscape layout. At the front setback for the main pedestrian entrance from Salem, it has a winding, meandering pathway to go into the front area to provide access as the podium height raises up. What staff is asking is to investigate perhaps simplifying that, reducing the amount of hardscape, enhancing the amount of landscaping, and having a lift potentially. We notice there's a mechanical room in the subterranean garage, and it can be of it over in this area where you can set it in there and outside the front setback. In the last condition, provide detailed drawings depicting the typical junctions of different the different cladding materials. Before I conclude staff's presentation, I did receive one comment in person. I don't think they wanted to be named by names, but they had concerns about parking in the neighborhood. They're afraid of this having the parking impacts flooding out to the street, and he had some concerns about the design with its compatibility with the neighborhood. This concludes staff's presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer for you.
Thank you, Mr. Joe. That was a very nice presentation. Now, I do have some questions, and others might as well. Can you briefly go over the common area for us? I realize that in the front there is additional common open space, and it seems as though the regular open space is kind of adjacent to it. Can you just, in outline, describe to us the common open area project?
Yes, there's two requirements for that we require for this project, which is common outdoor space, which I'm going to first point out at this at A21A, which is providing the common outdoor space, which is in the central area, and it kind of goes on the, I believe this is the east interior and the south interior area. Staff acknowledges, and we even stated this in our report, that it's probably not the most usable. However, it's mitigated by a additional open space area provided in the front that can kind of mitigate the impact from that. And that's kind of, we wanted to, with one of the conditions, we wanted to extend this planter out here to kind of divide any sense of ownership from 106 to this area over here. So, and I hope that answers your question. The additional open space diagram is up in this front area right here and outside of the street front setback, which is a minimum of 20 feet.
Thank you. The question I had was when you have the additional open space and you have a third level, you're supposed to set back the third level additionally. But I noticed that the building is stacked. Is that because they're stepping back the 3 feet from the bottom level and going up?
They are. This might actually be incorrect. Let's see. The street front, that section doesn't really show it, but the setback here is 31 feet, 20 feet. So the 20-foot setback and 31.5 feet from the front property line for the first level. On the second level, in total, that becomes 51.5. And then this is the second floor line, and it goes back, additionally, this goes back to 53.10 inches.
So it goes back 2 foot something.
2 foot something. Correct.
And the third level is the same as the second level?
Yes. Correct.
So
Yes.
that's just something that I think staff just needs to verify, is that once you have the common open space, additional common open space, you need to step back, and I don't want them having issues down the road and plan check on that matter.
I understand what you're saying. I think what they did was at this diagram, and I understand exactly what you're talking about because I went over these plans pretty meticulously. As you can tell from here, they automatically just put 6 foot automatically across by this diagram here. And this is the unit space of 106 and 206 and 306. So it's all of it is set back 6 feet.
Very good. And so we could verify with the architect as well on that matter. Very good. That was what I was asking in the first place. They set it back in the get-go and go straight up.
Right.
Do we have any other questions for staff at this point? Yes, Mr. Charshi.
I have a question in reference to the open area. So what's the thinking with this central, what I'd call plaza area that's indicated in the blue area and is with artificial lawn as the material of this area consisting of? What is the thinking on that?
Perhaps that's something we can ask the applicant on. Staff does agree that the area is probably not of the best design. And it's not but however, it does meet the minimum for common outdoor space.
And then what is the slope change from street to entrance for the meandering, ADA walkway?
The podium height from the semi-subterranean is 3 feet, as shown on the section.
So would that require railing if that was just a straight shot, or?
If it's 1 to 20 slope, it does not require.
If it has a wheel curb also.
That's right. That's right. So we could ask the architect if that switchback ramp is at 1 to 20.
Okay. And then, there's a lot of questions I have. I'll save them for the architect, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Joe, for a wonderful
Thank you.
JP Buladian, welcome. Thanks for enduring a long evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Jean-Pierre Baladian. I'm the designer on the project, and thank you, Dennis, for the presentation. As you know, I'm going to keep it short, but I want to emphasize on the few questions. Can I approach?
Of course.
Okay. Two things we've been working diligently with the staff.
Get you to pass over the pointer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you can see we've been working with the staff as far as you're concerned about the 3+6 for the additional area, those are required, which we worked like day and night to meet up that, and we made the changes. And I feel 300% comfortable, I'm sure Dennis too, that we are okay, that we won't face that issues during the plan check. Two, somehow we changed this already, somehow it didn't reflect here. I don't know if it was because we're bringing the revised plans. If you look at the reduced versions, probably...
What sheet would you like us to go to?
A1. I think somehow you guys got somehow... Because I have differently here. I could show you this. With those comments that we talked about, you see here we already, per the staff recommendation, we did the linear approach to avoid that snake and then have steps and then provide a lift going from the street level to the podium. So we did revise that somehow.
Yeah, staff's never seen that, but if it's true, we'll look at it later.
Okay.
This reflected, there were some other concern the staff had for the horizontal, to break down the verticality or continue the horizontality of the Salem into Columbus, which we had a discussion to wrap this element, the metal cladded portion, into the Columbus, and then it wraps around. It broke down introduce more horizontal and match the Salem. Other comments we had, which we fixed it to, is at this corner where the wood fascia to turn around and continue into that facade plane. We did that, and then we switched few things, the stucco, the smooth stucco versus the colors gray and white, to give it more balanced.
And just for the record, the staff comments reflect your revisions. We thought there would be an ability to enhance the horizontality even more. So.
Which we made it to the better. I mean, thanks to Jay's comments.
Well,
we enhanced it to the positive. I mean, to the positive, better looking design.
But just so I'm clear, what you're describing, is that what's being illustrated on the elevation as the latest?
Correct. The elevations are the most current ones.
And on the north elevation, those fins, horizontal fins on the left side, you said wood fascia.
The facade?
Yes.
Yes.
Where is the wood fascia?
This is the wood. This is the brown.
Are you talking about the siding?
The siding.
Okay, I see.
And the rest is going to be metal cladding.
Okay, so all the eyebrows are metal cladding.
Correct.
And then we have a siding material.
Correct.
Okay.
And also, we have one element that we're introducing to add to as a material is the modular art panels, which will be at this elevation. You could see on the rendering which is right here, at that location, which is at this face. And we have a sample too of the product.
Is that sample? Well, okay, it kind of actually, if you angle it, yeah, there we go. So it answers.
Jay wanted to see.
Yeah, it answers my question. It's not. It's not uniform. This piece makes it seem uniform, but it's not uniform. Okay, so different size.
And where is that being located? I see it on, so.
It's at this plan.
This side.
You can see on the side here.
Is this accurate?
Well, this is the previous. We have to push this elevation into further end. You could see from here. We had to push in because for the additional open area, so we had to push that plane in about 6 to 10 feet further in.
Okay, but the intent
that's
is
the
to
intent.
have this,
Correct.
this screening material, this precast screening material embedded, and it's
Into
going
wall.
to occur on Salem on the west side of the,
Correct.
on the east side of the project.
Correct, at this location,
Got it.
which is behind this wall, and this is the side. So it brings in the daylight, it gives us privacy, design, and shadow. It adds a character to the building.
So it would be illustrated, it would also show up on the west elevation as well?
No.
On the east. It'd show up on the east. It's on the east elevation.
It's
and
over
then-
here, right?
Correct.
And then it would show up on this
Correct.
elevation. And where's that elevation? It's,
This is the front elevation.
yes, and then.
This is the front, and this is that side.
Okay, so it's not indicated here, it's missing.
No, it's right here.
I see.
Because of the building, you see, it's articulates.
I see, but this kind of shows the circles all the way going to
It
the
will
edge.
show, when you look at this way, you'll see it.
If you look at sheet,
Walking, you're going to see from this side, it's sticking out.
if you look at the plan drawing A22, you can see it there in relation to the building.
Chairman, do you have any questions?
It's a
No,
sticking.
go ahead, while I.
I have a question in
look at
reference
this.
to the clearance on the driveway going down. Is there, can I borrow this? Is there an opportunity to cover a little bit of this across here?
We
From
have to-
elevation, or are you?
No, we
already-
have to have that
Clearance.
ADA clearance, which is 8'2" minimum.
So you're at 8'2" right there?
We maxed it. I mean, we always prefer to give it as much as we can to the floor, but we're maxed out. I mean, that opening is about 36. It's about 38 feet, which is pretty normal.
Mr. Boladian, the screening material, what size panels do they come in?
This is actual.
This is actual.
They come in pieces.
And then you could put as many as you want together, I see. And then, do you need to have a structural frame around it?
We're gonna structure frame it as a box.
So it's almost like a metal frame? needs to go
Exactly. We
around.
have the framing, and then we'll infill.
And would that be out of wood or metal? That would
Do what?
The frame?
The frame? It's going to be out of. It could be out of framing.
And then you would stucco the edges
We're
to
gonna
it?
the edges. You see here, it's
That's right.
all smooth stucco. So
Okay.
you have this box, 2 square per floor, and then you infill those panels into it.
One more question, thanks for bearing with
Yeah.
me. So is the idea that you're recessing this panel inside kind of a thicker...
Opening, thicker wall.
Frame,
We
got
have a
it.
thicker 12-inch wall.
Smooth plaster, and then this is set inside and it's colored all the same? Got it.
Exactly.
But I have a question.
Yes,
So is the face, so the face of this will be set back from the
Correct.
first of
It's
the
in-
stucco? And what's
It's not
that
flush.
dimension?
Which one? The outer piece?
opposite.
12-inch. It's a thicker wall, thicker opening, and this will be inset. So it gives us some depth and light.
And with this same material, you're using it horizontally in this rendering as the top?
No, we were going to use it, but that's no longer was the case when we pushed the building in. So it's not going to be on the roof.
I see.
Because of the additional open areas, I couldn't do it anymore.
You had to have it open to the sky.
To comply with the 3+6 articulation.
So do you only have one copy of A21 that shows the new open space? Is that the one copy that?
Somehow, I don't know. I provided it. I have to check with staff. We provided all those plans. I don't know somehow.
Would you like me
mixed
to
up.
get it back from staff?
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at that from staff.
Is that purely decorative,
Yes.
that element?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm looking at your A10, the one that you just submitted, the singular copy that you have that staff for some reason does not have. And you've incorporated this lift, okay? And so I haven't had a chance to study this, but would there be an opportunity to work with the elevator, the existing
To
elevator
stop it
shaft?
to that level?
To stop it to that level? Is there an opportunity there?
I could entertain to looking into that. I think I looked at it it was kind of a last minute modifications we had. I think I could look into it if I could have that elevator to stop to that level and then continue back up. But I'm trying to, at the same time, by providing that stop on that pedestrian level, you're going to have that elevator wall facing the street, and then you have to screen it. I think what architecturally kind of, I'm pretty much hesitant. I want to keep it more soft to have that lift there. It's only 3 feet, less than 3 feet rise, so we could screen it with a nice planter and going there. It wouldn't be that heavy instead of having a door facing the street.
Yeah, and then of course the other issue is that you're walking straight into the front of the property, then you're cutting right to a staircase, and you're going straight, and then you're cutting left to get into the unit. So
it's open.
This is open. There's a depiction of a wall here with a gate.
Can I approach?
Please. This is open?
This is a gate. That's the gate, screen gate.
Yeah, so you're coming like this, you're
So
going
you
like
kinda
this,
walk
you're
in,
coming
you
like
have a
this, you're
nice
coming like
open-
this, you're coming like that.
Yeah.
So it's as
we
you're
could
approaching.
I mean, we could change that door. I mean, it does make it more feng shui. I mean, we could have a door facing this way too. It's not pretty
Okay.
much open.
Okay.
Mr. Paladian, as far as the center courtyard is concerned, where it says play area, can you elaborate on that with some thoughts as to programmatically what you anticipate occurring there as good use?
Well, for the play area, I mean, we have to be careful with liability, and it's pretty much we're looking at more as a gathering area with benches and sitting areas, some water fountain elements. And we have kind of on the front, we have more open area. We left it. It could be more open as a playground area by facing the front towards Salem.
You mentioned liability. Are these going to be apartments or condos?
Condos.
Condos. So they're going to be owner occupied. So the liability
believe.
concern for the HOA?
Well, it's probably.
Probably, maybe, we don't know.
I'm not an attorney.
There's not a commitment to it. Okay. And then the benches and the potential water feature are not depicted.
Well, it is. We are going to furnish it with benches and sitting areas. We have in the middle area. We have a covered area. We want to put tables and chairs and water fountain, which we show the water fountains.
Okay.
And we want to keep it simple and clean.
Your water feature is in the front, though, near the entrance, correct?
Correct. We have one. We have internally too.
And is that depicted on the one version that we have, or is that only on the new version?
Should be depicted. We have it there.
Is that on the new version?
There's one. There's 3 areas. I could see it from there.
Come on, you can see it because you know where to look. I can't see it because I saw the fountain at the entrance.
There's one on
I don't
on
see
your
it.
left, in the middle, along the property line.
In this area that we're talking about here, is it where you said there's going to be a water feature? Where is this water feature?
We have a water fountain.
Okay, so there's one here.
And then we're going to have a sitting area and play area here too.
Okay, so there's no water feature in the center?
No.
Okay, because you...
It's all right here.
Okay, I mean, I'm not trying to be hypercritical, but
No,
you
no,
just
sorry.
said there's going to be a
Yeah.
water feature in the play area, which we were discussing, and there isn't one. Okay.
If you want there, we'll provide one too.
It's not that I want one. I want to see what we're thinking about here. That's what I'd like to see. Okay, I have no more questions.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions for the designer? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next speaker is Kirk Garapetyan.
And I believe he just left.
Okay, well, if he comes back, he could speak. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this case? If you would, come on up, introduce yourself, and then you could fill out a card and give it to staff afterwards, and the cards are by the front door. Oh, you got one. Wonderful.
Hi, my name is Lina Khachikian. I'm one of the residents in one of the single families, 376 Salem Street. I'm actually very happy that finally they're building this single family houses. The only, because the half of the building, probably the one that I'm living, it's almost like 5 to 10 inches from the roof and from the ground, I think sinked into the ground. So the floor is basically not stable, the roof is not stable. So I'm very glad that they're doing a really great job and they're trying to build these houses. But there is only a few issues that I want to mention, and hopefully they can take a point and try to build a better buildings. One is the parking issue that we really want to make sure, because I'm hoping that when they're done, I can either purchase one unit from them or lease one unit from them, and because I like the area. The parking issue is because it's very close to Glendale Galleria. People come and park on the streets, and they constantly shopping and they constantly parking. So there is no parking whatsoever. So we're always looking for the parking. Hopefully they can provide a floor specifically for the parking for the people who are coming and moving in, because I'm sure later on they will have issues with that. And since we're living there and they're trying to build the house, I just want to be notified sooner, maybe 2 or 3 months sooner, so I can start looking for a house, so I can move out. And hopefully when they're done, they can provide us or send me an email saying that the project is done, so I can either ask them to lease or to buy a unit. And that will be all, I think, but I'm sure this is going to be a really good project.
Well, thank you very much. Some of the things you requested are certainly outside the preview of this board, such as notification, etc., but I'm sure the developer will be glad to work with a future customer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this case before we close the public portion? Anyone? So we'll go ahead and close the public portion, but before that, Mr. Bouladian, I'd like to reopen it. As a rebuttal, do you have any last-minute thoughts that you'd like to add that you weren't addressed? I know the speaker didn't really bring anything up that was really crucial to the architecture. Is there anything that you want to...
Yeah, let me...
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to ensure, I just want to ensure that we're okay with all those recommendations that the staff, we worked together. I think we applied majority of them. I know it was the last minute. We were all working hard, both sides, to make it happen today. And I have no issue. And I like the project, and I like to see it done. It's something different, and it will improve that corner tremendously. So we'll be working next few months together, and we'll make it happen. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm pretty open for your advices. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So with that, we'll go ahead and close the public portion. No, she just spoke.
Okay. Sorry,
That's all right.
Handed something.
And Let's see, Mr. Billion, do you want to start us off on this one?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to say I would confirm what the lady had mentioned earlier. I know this area very well, and I always drive by these three houses, and it looks like a camp from like 1850 or something. So something needs to happen here. So, and I'm so happy to see this project. I mean, I believe that staff and the architect did a really good job addressing most of the issues, and I'm in support of the project, and I also support all the recommendation and the conditions staff imposed.
Mr.
Okay. I don't drive by this project, but I did specifically for tonight, and I'm in agreement with your comment. I think that it's good that it's being developed. And I'm glad to see that we're getting a proposal that is trying to bring a more modern touch to the area. I think it would benefit from that. I do have some concerns, however, and they're partially addressed with the redesign of the entry, which also was a staff consideration. But I think that the front entry needs some more thinking. I think that there's an opportunity there to increase some common space, maybe usable space. This project, as projects of this kind, unfortunately, are subject to, doesn't have a lot of usable open space. A lot of the space is basically hallway, or court or walkway, and so I think that. Any square foot of space that you can gain is a good one. So that area, I think, is one area that you can at least have some maybe green space that's attractive to the people that live there or own there. The other area that I have concern with, and I want to kind of thinking on, is the barbecue area that is basically on the street, on Salem, and how do you, I think, better utilize that space, make the space larger, as staff kind of suggested, without taking away from Unit 106's semi-private area. I agree that if there's a gate there, it kind of should stay. I don't think that making that open and moving a plan around achieves that. I think that needs to be thought about in a different way. But my other concern would be having this space better shielded from the street. If I lived in a complex of this nature, I would not necessarily want to be barbecuing on the street. And if I was a neighbor, I wouldn't want to be seeing people barbecuing on the street. So to make it functional, I think you need to work on the landscaping, or maybe some other, maybe hardscape that makes it work. So that area, I think, is the area that is of concern. And then when you look at the subterranean, and I think it's no surprise now that I'm always concerned about trash enclosures, because I think they're horribly done in a lot of areas. And here again, we have the elevator and the trash receptacle right next to each other. So I would invite my colleagues to comment on what their thoughts are on the positioning of that and the sizing. The sizing looks fine to me, and I understand the ease of which this will be able to be exited, to be collected by the refuse company. However, I always hesitate having a elevator shaft right next to your trash enclosure because of the aesthetics that entails. And it seems from a parking perspective, and I could be wrong, that there seems to be in the southern part of the subterranean area an opportunity to maybe create one or two more parking spots in this space here, where the square footage and the number of parking stalls is indicated.
Well, he's using that as his drive aisle.
That's a drive aisle.
Is that drive aisle?
Yeah.
That's okay.
It's the only way to get to the left hand.
But with that column, that's, the circular or half circle, is there a possibility of adding one side space there?
It's
no?
It's a pretty narrow area. I think what you're looking at is that kind of bump out. It's like a semicircle.
The bump out, yeah. Too narrow?
It's less, well, you can see on one of the dimensions is 7.5 feet. That's from left of that bump, and you look at that call out that dimension, and it's less than that. That's probably like 5.5 feet, which is pretty substandard for another parking space.
Okay.
Then be sufficient.
Well, maybe they'll think of a way to use that space other than what it is now. Maybe a bike rack or something in that area might be beneficial, or bike racks, something to use that space. Because I think inch of space, every inch of space is required. They don't see any bike racks yet. You're right. So that might be a good place for bike racks. And then I want to visit the play area, or the area designated as a play area. Search for my notes. I think that area would benefit from seating, and I think that it is something that staff can review within their purview. But it would be nice to have seating notated on what we're reviewing. So as a note to Mr. Joe, thank you. I would like to see seating actually notated. Bless you. On these plans, because that's what we're approving, right? And without a seating arrangement, I have no idea if it's going to be furniture that they're recommending, a hardscape with seating elements built in. What is it? And I think that space is as the focal point of the project's common space, and the meeting area for all the neighbors as they go in and out of the complex, is very important to have something other than just an artificial grass turf area, regardless of what concerns are on liability. I think those can be addressed. And I think an amenity of some sort might be useful, because my fear here is, and I'll address this to the applicant and ownership as well. You don't want this to turn into a place where the pets, if they're allowed, are relieving themselves, because that's what pets do on artificial turf a lot of times, and it becoming a nuisance area really versus an invitational area. So it's an area that I think is a concern.
We can have cross communication.
I'm sorry, but it's indicated here on your plan as artificial lawn on the diagram here. So it says artificial lawn. That's what I'm going with.
What we could also do is, Ms. Charchin, after you go through your comments, if there's a specific clarification,
yeah,
we
so,
could ask Mr.
sure.
Lauder to come up to
no problem.
answer just that specific component, which is the whether there's artificial turf or not artificial turf. Because I think he's already, we've asked him about how that use of that central courtyard, what the use of the central courtyard would be, and he tried to explain it.
Yeah, and
now I think that's the only question remaining.
Yeah, and so my recommendation for staff on this would be to get clarity on what the use is and have amenities that are appropriate for that use delineated in the plans. Okay, and let me make sure I have nothing else. And this is just to assist us, Mr. Joe, because this is one of the first times that I've had the pleasure of you presenting on these on the design. If you could please indicate on the staff report the requirements. For example, you indicate the heights, for example, of the buildings, but do not indicate what the height limitations are for that particular lot. And I, being the attorney, not the architect on the panel, don't have the heights and the minimum requirements memorized as my colleagues do. And for example, setbacks, you indicate that the building location is appropriate to the setbacks with no further information. So it would be helpful to have some additional information to work off of. And I think we've already addressed it, but I think seating at some points here, built-in seating would be appropriate and details appropriate for the design. Outdoor seating. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you. Before I go into my comments, which might be brief in nature, Mr. Plant, can you go over the conditions that we have so far? I know staff had quite a bit of conditions.
Yeah, so I'll go over the staff conditions. I believe
Yeah,
that...
what I'd like to do is, usually we all opine on the project and then we ask for a list of the conditions. What I'd like to do is just review that first before because I have a feeling most of everything I want to say has already been covered.
Okay. Starting with staff condition number 1, we asked that the horizontal design established at the front elevation be wrapped around more successfully at the Columbus elevation. There were some interim changes that were made, but based on the review set of drawings, we thought it wasn't as successful as it could be, so we wanted to work on that. At the less visible south and east elevations, a similar comment where we thought the horizontality should wrap the whole building, but at those less visible elevations, we thought it could be done with lesser materials through paint color changes, possibly some siding located closer to the streets. One of those elevations was revised, and we're more happy with it in the current plan, but one of them needed some more work. We didn't quite understand the canopies at the third floor balconies. They looked kind of like a different element with a different color compared to the other facade elements, so we wanted clarification on their design and asked that they be better integrated with the facades. We do feel strongly about the gate at the patio of Unit 106, and this is a pretty common issue in our review when we look at common space, even on smaller projects. It very often appears that someone opens up a sliding glass door or a door onto the common space from one unit, which in our view leads to the possibility that the common space sort of becomes colonized by the person who has that immediate access rather than the other residents.
Mr. Plan, let's just stop on that point, if you may, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, because that one is something that maybe the rendering I have isn't very clear versus the rendering that is being, the revised rendering. But it seems to me how is that not private space for Unit 106?
We're looking at the plan view on A1.0. And there's a kind of a long patio running along the face of 106 on the north face of that unit.
Okay.
Which is pretty standard. It's a generous space for the private space.
Yes.
Then there's a pair of what appear to be double gates that swing out into a walkway, which means that walkway space is really just there for the person leaving the patio and going to the common space.
I see the thinking now.
So the idea was to extend the planter that you see wrapping the existing corner so that planter it would reduce the size of the patio possibly a bit, but it would provide kind of a landscape screening plus a barrier so that the common space could be enlarged and better used.
So the thinking really is that Unit 106 has this private patio, but they don't really have this access point, which basically then allows them to privatize the space past that gate.
Right, which is especially a problem with this project. We saw the issues in terms of gaining access to the front, but any other tenant in the building is going to have to come down from their unit, go through the central courtyard toward the back of the building, come down the lateral walkway, then walk along the side of the building to get to the common space. So anything we could do to avoid, making it easy for that one unit to take it over, we thought was important.
Also, on that note as well, Mr. Platt, and as we're discussing kind of how to better that common open space and make it more integral, I had a question, I think, for Mr. Collin. Mr. Collin, or Mr. Joe, in fact, would it be possible to place a trellis of some sort over that common area which occurs past the 20-foot setback, which on sheet 1.0 is depicted as kind of a seating area that seems to have a barbecue area? Could a trellis be placed on a portion of additional common open space when it's past the 20-foot?
Yeah.
Outside of the interior setback, but not into the front setback. Yes. For the most part, it looks like it could be achieved.
Okay. Because, as we were And I think the intent, as I asked for us to go over the conditions, was to kind of work these out as we're going through them. I think there's been some comments along the way of, well, really the only common open area is really at that area that we're talking about at the moment, just east of the driveway. And I think what would help is a nice trellised covering coupled with the fact of reworking those planters so 106 is bifurcated from the common open space. And then these trellises could have planters, as they already do, off of Salem to better provide for screening, possibly with some sort of shrubbing material that grows high, maybe as far as 6 feet or whatever it is, that really creates a buffer between Salem and this common open area. And I think that, coupled with the trellis above, maybe with some bougainvilleas that would grow over the trellis and through it, would soften that area up quite a bit.
Add some privacy to it.
Add some privacy to it.
It crossed my mind when you were talking about separating the barbecue area from the street that we have a very interesting material being used here, which possibly could be used
Absolutely,
as a kind
as
of a
a
low screen.
That's right.
So
That's right.
So we could recommend that when we're working.
That's right. And
yeah.
And thinking about the trellis, I mean, the good thing is we're not in the city of Los Angeles because it applies to the FAR.
That's right. Yeah. And I believe in our case that would work. So, okay, so it seems as though we've ironed out that issue.
Okay, yes.
So proceed. I think we cut you off. You were on a roll.
Oh, yeah.
Was that number 7 on your list?
You're ambitious, not quite. We asked for the details, though, where the bay where the kitchens are to the right of the entrance has some what appear to be metal fins projecting from the window openings, which is a unique feature in that area, which we thought was appropriate since it's. I believe so, yeah. We just wanted to get more details about that so we knew what they really would look like. We asked that what we're calling the framing elements, these horizontal and vertical kind of brows that are projecting from the main face of the building, be clad with metal rather than stucco. We felt that the frame element, which we discussed before, around the modular material being used, the dimension suddenly shifted as you turn the corner. We thought it would look more elegant if the same framing dimension wrapped that as well as the other elements, as well as material. There was concern about the drawings just weren't clear about what we're calling kind of fence and wall elements at the garage podium. And so there are certain code requirements that those would have to meet. So we just need to get clarification on the drawings to make sure that meets code. That's good for that?
On one elevation, then the section drawing shows a fence along Columbus, which is not shown on the elevation nor on the site plan. So if there are walls along Columbus, we would want clarification for that as well.
Okay. It looks like they may have taken care of item 9, although there was further discussion from the board about possibly using the elevator in lieu of the lift. But quickly looking at the drawing, that may have addressed our concern about having that winding ramp at the front of the building. And then a standard condition that we have for lots of projects, just to clarify the details where different materials come together.
Just backing up 1 second on that entryway and how the resubmitted 1.0, I think there was some discussion on making sure that the gate opens up onto Salem, because at the moment it kind of you walk up to a barrier of some sort, whatever that material is, and then you go around. There's a small door, so the front door should face Salem, so the entry of the building is pronounced.
Okay, so that's the front entry gate. So we don't have the luxury.
I know you don't, and I try to describe it, but I know it's part. So there were just some comments about shifting the doors and making them face Salem.
On this, Mr. Simon, on this depiction, It actually works because of the way the walkway works.
Is the door facing Salem, or is it?
No, it's not. It's not. There's no door depicted, but the
it's more aligned than
that. Yeah, it's more aligned than this. So it's kind of hard to understand. My concern wasn't so much dictating where the door should be, but rather making sure that the flow isn't one where you're making, 5 directional changes or 4 directional changes to enter in a building. It just
makes
doesn't
sense
feel
for
right.
it to be more pronounced and more direct for everybody, including the fire department. So
we'll maximize, simplify the path of travel from the street to the door.
The whole thing should be considered. So as staff is working on that front additional open space and the common open space, the bifurcation from Unit 106, et cetera, that entryway, I think, would resolve itself through that discussion.
Okay.
And then the seating area that's missing now then can be reincorporated to allow for more common space use.
Yeah, do you want me to go through the conditions I was jotting down from your discussion?
Yes. I think you're talking more on the east side.
No, here. This has been eliminated to accommodate the lift.
There was a goal to increase usable open space at these common areas, to add more landscaping and more usable space. There's also several different comments about maximizing the amenities in those spaces to include more seating, and just to clarify exactly what the uses are. If there is a play area, make it a play area. If there isn't, identify a use, and then we'll verify that the amenities are appropriate. We talked about shielding the front area, the front common space facing the street, better from the street. So we now have a comment about adding a trellis, the possibility of including a screen wall of some sort closer to the street to create a sense of privacy there. We have a consideration to see if there's a possibility of moving the trash and elevator room so that they're not ditch that.
Just a recommendation.
Yeah, consideration. Yeah. Consideration to see if that's possible.
Just think about it.
There's a recommendation to look to see if the area in the garage next to the bump out for where there's a utility pole, if that can be better utilized for additional bike storage, bike parking, or something else.
I think it's required, right? Mr. Simonia said that. Yes.
Yeah, bike parking, I believe, is required now.
Yeah.
So we'll have to find it one way or the other.
Throw it there.
So I'll make a clear
nowhere else.
A clear note to indicate bike storage. And additional seating, appropriate amenities. The trellis that we're talking about at the front, I'm presuming that would be a metal trellis rather than a wood trellis, or
match the architecture better. Yeah.
Okay. So metal trellis, and that's everything on my notes.
Well, I had a feeling that most of everything I was going to say has already been, I think, said, if not just reiterated and listed. So with those conditions, I'm comfortable approving the project and moving forward. So are there any thoughts on a motion?
Yeah, I think that, again, I go back to what I stated earlier. I think the fact that this lot is being developed is a good thing. The fact that the detailing and the effort has been put in to bring a really good design from the exterior is a good thing. And now that we're addressing some of the interior issues, I'm comfortable moving forward with approval. But I want to stress to staff that we need to, before it comes to DRB, have a little bit more meat in the staff comments as to some of the requirements and how they're being met, so that we're not spending the time figuring them out, on the dais. And as far as common area amenities, they should be, especially for projects like this, they should be depicted. So again, we're not spending the time guessing as to whether they're there or not.
Yeah, that's something we usually focus on. We just neglected to here.
And it's not a negative comment to staff. I understand that with the DRB schedule and trying to make sure everything's coming in and everything else, that it happens and it's fine. But it would be really helpful, I think, for projects like this to have that. That way, the applicant isn't sitting here thinking that we're nitpicking him when we're really trying to just get information.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I'll make the motion if it's okay. If there's no other comments, I'll make a motion to approve with conditions.
I'll second that.
Okay, this will be roll call. We have a motion by Board Member Charchian and a second by Board Member Benlian. This is roll call. Board Member Benlian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchian?
Yes.
Mr. Chair Simonian?
Yes.
The vote approves 3-0.
Okay. I have no other items.
And we have
on our
no
list
minutes.
Except the minutes, I think.
There's
right?
no minutes for tonight, so I will entertain a motion for
To adjourn.
adjourn.
I'll make it.
Good evening.
Okay. And Mr. Collin, I have the materials from the first one. Do you generally just want these?
We'll collect everything. Whatever you guys don't want to keep as souvenirs, we'll take.
Oh, you don't keep speaker cards?
Speaker cards we have.
Yeah, these are the speaker cards and the support letters that were commented on by the speakers.
For the important
guys. Okay, and then this is a one only